neighbors, friends. Call to order the regular city council meeting, successor agency meeting, and housing authority meeting of May 13th, 2024. The time is 6 p.m. I'd ask that Captain Walker please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain. Madam City Clerk, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Duncan.
Here.
Councilmember Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Venable.
Here.
Mayor Beaver.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
I just got a phone call Saturday night that Greg Bollinger passed away. He was a big time in Yucaipa. Really close friend of mine. Done a lot of stuff for the city of Yucaipa and the lights and everything. Just an amazing man. If anybody's known him, he's a giant individual. He makes me look really tiny. His head's that big, just a giant man. But it's a big loss to the city of Yucaipa, and I just wanted to, you guys say your prayers tonight, sir. Keep them in your prayers. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. City Manager, are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
No changes, sir.
All right. Moving on to our Yaps Dog of the Month. Dogs. There's several back there. There's a wagon load of them.
I brought my little red wagon.
Here we go.
Patrol litter here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make them deal with it. No, I got thank you with the jumps here. As much as they'd love to go off-roading, I'm sure. Hi, everyone. So this is our ever adorable Paw Patrol litter. There was 6 of them, but now there's 4. And for those of you that don't know, I'm Krista with Yucaipa Animal Placement Society, or YAPS. And we are your local nonprofit dog and cat rescue. And these are some of our adoptables. This is Marshall. This is Rubble. And then Everest and Zumo. So she's the only girl left. There was 2 girls and 4 boys. We think there's some kind of dachshund mix. Unfortunately, we don't know mom or dad. They were left under a tree at just 4 weeks old. And one of our local shelters called and said, please help us. And a foster luckily stepped forward and was able to take these guys on until they're old enough to come up for foster to adopt. So they are available for foster to adopt now at YAPS. Hi. And for those of you wondering, we are always in need of fosters. We're always in need of volunteers. I know our volunteer program got a little bit backed up, but we're always needing extra help to carry around the floofs. And fostering, it can be a long-term commitment if you want to hang on to them till they're adopted, or if you just want a weekend getaway with them, or a 2-week stint with them. We're really open to anything to try and give these guys some chances off-site from YAPS. As awesome as we are, nothing compares to a home. So always keep that in mind if you're not quite ready to bite the bullet and adopt yet. We always have foster options. Yeah, thanks for having us here tonight.
All right, let's get these puppies in the newspaper, huh? Let's get some pictures.
What do you think? Come on, Wiggles. Here, you know what? Let's just make this easy on us. You guys are only 2 pounds. Yeah. Come here, Squirms. It's like I've done this before. All right, who wants a puppy? You got Marshall. That's yes. Who's a puppy?
I want to see Venable. Look at it. Look at the window. That's holding smiling.
Nothing beats a puppy snuggle.
Good job.
There you go. We're not sure, because we don't know what mom or dad was, so I would just say no, but you never know as they get a little older. So, but they're hilarious. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Come on.
All right, sorry, folks. Just working through some paperwork up here. All right, that was awesome. Public comment. If anybody would like to speak during general public comment, there's speaker slips in the back near Dr. Wong. If you bring them down and hand them to our city clerk, she'll make sure they get routed to me. As a reminder, speakers are allotted 3 minutes to speak on any agenda item or not, non-agendized item as well. If you would like to speak on an agendized item, please denote in the box which item you'd like to speak on so we can have you speak during that time. And as a reminder, let's just be courteous of all. First speaker, Don Carlson, followed by Dr. Hanson Wong. Don Carlson? Yes, please.
Yeah, I recently got a increase.
Sir, come over here to the, just so that everybody who's watching at home can hear you as well.
Yeah, as you did, I got an increase recently from the Yucaipa Water Department on waste management.
Hey, Don, can you do me a favor? Address the council so that we can address any of the issues you have.
Said I recently got a letter from the Yucaipa Water Department on waste management about the increase for next year. And it showed on the letter what the proposed rate would be for next year. So I thought, well, that's understandable. Everybody needs an increase. But then I looked back at last year, and it had current rate, proposed rate. It averaged out about 7%. Then I look back at this year. Why isn't there a current rate in there so you can see what the increase is? So I look back at last year's proposed rate, which is this year's current rate. It's about a 20% increase. I'm just asking, is that fair? 20% increase, last year was 7%. And why wasn't the current rate put in this year's letter? Are they trying to hide something? I don't know. It's not up to me to determine what the increase should be, but it's up to me to be upset when I don't put the current rate in there so you can tell what the increase was. Thank you.
Have you spoke to the water board?
Pardon?
Have you spoke to the water board?
No.
Okay, so this
I
body,
did call them, and they told me to come to the board meeting.
so this is the city council meeting. The water district in Yucaipa is a public entity with its own elected board members that have, who represent you. We have zero control over all things school board, water board. This body has no influence over those matters.
What are you saying, I have to go to waste management?
To the water district. Well, in Yucaipa, you either get water from Yucaipa Valley Water, or was it Western?
Waste management.
Burtech. I think you're talking about Burtech.
You're talking about water or waste?
It comes from the water department, but it's for waste management, Burtech. It's the
In the water?
Burtech Waste Management pickup at
On the water bill?
your street address.
Burtech. Okay.
So I'm saying they didn't put in last year the current rate so you could see what the increase was. Last year they did that. Are they trying to hide a 20% increase? I don't know.
Okay. All right. For waste. Okay. Thank you for your comments, sir.
Okay.
Dr. Wong?
Good evening. I hope all of you did right by your mothers this weekend. Hanson Wong, Yucaipa. So, a lot of the council members, committee members, commission members, they have families, they work. They're not lazy like I am with nothing better to do. And so with the reports, especially the ones that, agenda packets that are 400 pages or more, it would be nice that if we could have it ahead of time for these committees and for the city council members, a week 5 days, whatever it is they're able to do, it would help some of you and some of the committee and commission members to be able to actually look at it, read it, and, you know, get some understanding, make a few phone calls and so on. So I would suggest for you to consider if the city staff can prepare some of this stuff, especially the large agenda packets ahead of time enough so you have a chance to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, sir. Any more general comments, speaker slips? Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to consent agenda. This evening's consent agenda consists of items 1 through 17. Is there any member of the council that would like to remove an item from consent for further discussion? Is there a motion approval?
Hold on. I think I forgot to write it down. I think there's 2 dealing with the sheriff's department that I may have to abstain from, but I don't remember what the numbers are. One's dealing with contract. Is that under consent?
Yes, Councilman. Item number 17, which is, I believe, the last item under consent, pertains to extension of the lease agreement between the city and the county for the use of the police station.
Is that to the county or the sheriff's department?
So the lease is for the sheriff's department use, but it's with county real estate services. I'd recommend, just out of an abundance of caution, disqualifying or abstaining from that vote, Councilmember Thorpe.
From
Although
17. Wasn't there another one too, though?
That one's on discussion, I believe.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Number 23.
Okay, so abstaining for item number 17 for Councilman Thorpe. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Venable,
I'll second minus 17. I'll abstain from that one.
seconded by Councilman Thorpe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Item number 18, adoption of urgency ordinance 466U. This is going to be by Mr. Ben Matlock.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Today I have for bringing back a temporary moratorium related to the set down of mobile homes that are greater than 10 years old within the city's mobile home parks. I do want to note that this is for the set down of a new unit within a park, not necessarily dealing with any of the existing units that are currently within the city's 42 parks. And so just want to kind of address kind of the history. So this was presented at the April 8th, 2024 City Council meeting. 3 had voted in favor of the temporary moratorium. However, a 4/5 vote was not met, which is required. However, after that denial, one of the council members that had voted no requested that this item come back just for a little bit additional discussion and potential action moving forward. And then it was continued at the April 22nd meeting without discussion. Do want to just kind of re-highlight again that staff did provide some responses. There was a flyer passed out that essentially related to existing residents and the condition of their coaches. This ordinance itself only deals with temporary moratorium for new units that are brought into the city, not necessarily have any impact to existing units that are currently in one of our parks. And
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, if I may, just for the Spanish for the benefit of the Spanish-speaking audience, buenas noches. Para la audiencia que habla español, este artículo solo se refiere a las unidades o las casas móviles que se proponen a instalar, no a las casas existentes. Si usted es propietario o vive en una casa móvil existente que tiene más de 20 años, este artículo no le afecta a ustedes. Thank you.
so just want to make sure that that is clear. Kind of after that, city staff has continued to kind of work on with different stakeholders, and so we did have a few different meetings that occurred. So on the 29th, the city did meet with one of our park owners that owns a number of different mobile home parks. We kind of discussed some of the permits that they are going through when they bring in older units and kind of rehab them, and some inconsistencies with the scope of work and making sure that that's more clear so that as the state agency partners review different projects, it's pretty clear. One of the challenges with kind of the mobile home set down is the city is a local agency. We review the permit for the unit being brought in, But unlike any other property in the city of Yucaipa, building safety does not have the jurisdiction within the actual unit. So if something gets modified, redo plumbing, new electrical, that isn't within the city, it's within the state agency. And so they have to be responsible for that permit process. And so if there's misconnections on details, they're not going to know, the state may not respond appropriately in terms of what their inspections are, and then we're trying to play catch up. And so that really is one of the challenges that we have. And we're trying to make sure that we can tighten up that provision so that the future residents are living in safe conditions. We did also tour with the MHET and WMA representatives. So they represent kind of park owners and the set down of units and making sure that the park owner, their views are recognized. And so they did understand the challenges that the city has and recognize the issues that we've been having with some of these older units being brought in and the division between the state and the local cities kind of role in those permits, and that potential solutions need to be sought. And then we also did meet with YMRA, Yucaipa Mobile Home Residents Association members, and some of the challenges that they had. And then staff also attended their meeting on Saturday to provide information about the ordinance, about what it does, and more importantly, what it is not proposing. And so again, kind of the residents identified some concerns. One was, you know, hey, if I have a 20-year-old or older coach that I own, if I want to move it within another park, would I be able to do it? Kind of as part of that issue, most mobile home parks won't allow that. Only a few allow older units to be brought into their parks anyways. And then as a resident, the cost of moving your physical unit to another park is pretty cost prohibitive. And so we haven't seen requests of individual residents trying to do that. Usually they'll sell their individual unit and then buy something else if they're moving between one park or another, just because the cost of physically moving it is very prohibitive for those residents. Another kind of component was, you know, hey, if I have a 20-plus-year-old unit, if it gets damaged, what will happen? Will insurance cover the replacement of a newer one? And then certainly would it cover kind of rehab an older one? I'm not aware of insurance writing a check and saying, hey, you can bring in an older unit and then have the park owner rehab it on site. That's not normally how that works. And then kind of the last concern from the WYMRA was just kind of mandating requirements on the parts, you know, trying to make sure that, you know, where's the city's role to protect future residents and making sure code enforcement is a key solution. And so code enforcement in terms of dealing with some of these units that are brought in and red tagged, such as the picture here, we can see a red tag on the actual unit being brought in, as well as just other conditions. This is a commercial modular that's been converted and residents are living in it, even though permits have not been completed on it. Code enforcement is proactive on it, but we're trying to help kind of resolve or kind of nip it in the bud earlier in the stage rather than responding with code enforcement. And so this ordinance itself is really just a temporary pause as we work with the state to figure out a better solution to the problem we've been seeing, that dividing line between where the state's role is and the city's. The urgency ordinance itself is for initially 45 days, then can be approved for a full total year and then 2 years total. So it's no more than 2 years at maximum. And then during any extension, it does require city council approval, a public hearing, and then we also have to report on the progress we've made. And so that's all staff is requesting right now is the temporary pause while we work with the state and try to resolve the issue before more units be brought in and we have to retroactively deal with them as they come in. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ben. Are there any questions of staff?
I do. So can a red tag mobile home, if it's capable of being moved to a park, can that be brought up to spec as far as the building code?
In theory, potentially, yes, where they could go through the remodeling of it. It's just not very clear that that is being upheld in a way that is actually verifying that that's been done. So stuff is being brought in, they're getting some level of permits, but I don't know if the extent, and it's unclear for staff, that the extent of remodeling has been done to address those structural deficiencies in the first place.
So if a real estate developer buys a dilapidated house that's been boarded up on a small lot in Yucaipa, and that house is not up to spec, is it possible for someone to buy that house and bring that house up to spec and have it inspected by the city?
Yes, so in that case, yes, the city would provide the inspections of that entire process.
Why wouldn't the city then, instead of having a moratorium, provide the inspections for any mobile home that's brought into Yucaipa and placed down or set down in a park?
So that's where the dividing line of the state role responsibility is. So in terms of the structure, the inside of it is permitted through the state, not the city. It's the only type of development in the city that's that way. So rather than the city building and safety checking the inspections of it and making sure it's all done, we're relying on the state to do that role. And so there's a breakdown that's happening during that process.
So the moratorium is so that we can get our spec or our code up to match the state's code? Or do we expect the state then to continue to inspect the inside and then we inspect the outside? I'm not sure I understand.
So it's to either work with the state and try to see if they will allow us to do the interior inspections and perhaps be more localized to follow through on it, or some other procedure thing that maybe they can do to help bridge that gap. And so it's looking at that lens and trying to go, how can we improve where this disconnect's happening between where the state's role is and the city's role is.
So this 45-day moratorium, what's the game plan?
So we will be meeting with HCD to go over this and then try to figure out potential long-term solutions with it. We will continue to meet with other partners as well, including like Julie Pauly with the WHA or WMA and all that stuff as well, and try to figure out some solutions to the issue.
So is Mr. Chen the only one doing this?
It has occurred on other, I think, parks as well, but just with the volume of parts that he has, certainly is the highest volume of issues that we've been seeing.
Any other questions of staff?
Yeah, yes. So I heard that they're sneaking in mobile homes in the middle of the night. Is that true?
So we have had units be brought in during later hours. I think at one time we met with one of the owners about 2 weeks ago, and they said that Caltrans prefers that they be brought in at night so that the traffic flows better. But we're definitely playing some degree of catch-up where we'll have residents call and say, hey, something in poor condition has been brought in. What's going on here? And so we're playing catch-up at that time once it's there.
So are permits being pulled to bring these mobile homes into these spaces? Or are they being put in there with no permits?
Sometimes being brought in without necessarily the permits or kind of retroactively dealing with it, or the state permits are unclear if they've done that process first or not.
So what are we doing about that? How are we enforcing that?
So that is done through code enforcement. So if we see stuff where they brought it in and they haven't received permits, then they'll be issued a citation for it. But normally for all code enforcement activities is, let's say, hey, you need to get your proper permits. That once they initiate that process, then the code enforcement effort is kind of pause, allowing them to do it. And so that's where we're also running into issues where the timeline may be lagged or it's unclear whether or not the proper permits are being sought, but they're in all appearances trying to work on it. And so that's kind of an issue that we kind of run into, as well as making sure that that's being done correctly.
How many tickets or cites have they received so far that has not been taken care of?
We have quite a bit of code enforcement citations listed at related to these units.
How long have you been sitting on those?
I don't know the exact timeline. I know one of the units that we had that I pointed out here, this one I think has been in the permit process with the state for like a year and a half or so, but residents are already living in that unit. So
no permits have been pulled on that thing?
No permits have been finalized on it, no.
For a year?
A year and a half, yeah.
And
So they may have pulled the permits, but it's not been finalized in that case. And so you have residents living there, but without necessarily the process being complete on the front end.
Did you say someone's living in that without a permit?
Yeah, so this has not been finalized. This is a commercial modular structure that was converted into a house. They're going through the state permits, but it has not been completed with the state or the city, but there are residents that are living in there.
Are they supposed to be living in there?
No.
If there's no permits? How many of these mobile homes are out there where people are living in these things with no permits?
I don't know the exact number, but there's enough that this is why we brought this issue as an urgency ordinance.
All right, that's all I got.
So when something horrible happens in these close proximity homes, what kind of liability is the city facing for allowing this to happen?
So I don't know if we would have any specific liability just because we haven't authorized it, but it certainly, I mean, just as more of a compassionate part is we want to make sure that residents are living in safe conditions for it. And if the process hasn't been followed through in its entirety, we just can't assure that that's been done, and we want to make sure that that step has been closed up in a way that's meaningful.
So if we vote on this thing passes, how's this going to change? If the laws are being broke now, what's going to change if we vote this thing in?
So this at least gives, I think, a little bit more absolute authority in terms of if it doesn't meet the age limit, then it's already a non-starter and they have to pull it out. We can't retroactively try to make it up to snuff. The goal, though, is to figure out a better process with the state and making sure that we can be much more timely with those permits being done and try to get that loop closed, so then that way we're not running into this issue.
I just feel like, I mean, we're not even enforcing the laws or the rules that we have right now. What's this thing going to do for us? We've passed this. I mean, are we going to enforce these rules?
Yeah, so if it's over 20 years old and they're being brought in, it would not be something that they could permit. They would have to remove it.
Just the ones that are being brought in, not the ones that are existing there, right?
That is correct, yeah. Yeah, anything
So
that's
we're not
already
gonna-
here, there's no change to that. We're happy to keep them, so.
But this would actually affect, if someone wants to move a dilapidated coach out of a park and bring in a coach that maybe is in better condition but over 20 years old, this would affect them as well. Not just Mr. Chen, this would affect everyone that wanted to upgrade their coach. Once we set this in motion, if we say 20 years or newer is all you can bring in, that greatly affects our affordable housing in Yucaipa. Because the mobile home parks, there's 4,200 spaces, and that's a big part of our affordable housing. And
We have public speakers on the matter. Let's hear what they have to say before we move towards a vote. So Mr. Richard Hess is our first speaker, followed by Ms. Josette.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Richard Hess, 34480 County Line Road, Space 138. I'm also the General Manager for Inland Champion Investments, which is Mr. Chen that you guys have been talking about. Before I start, I wanted to thank City Manager and Jennifer and staff for hosting that meeting for us. It was very productive. We got a lot of, stuff talked about, and some of our concerns were actually even incorporated into the ordinance that I just read. However, we still oppose this ordinance because we feel that it's not basically urgent. You know, we have our first mobile home committee meeting on the 29th, which I'm a member of. I think during that meeting, there's going to be valuable conversation had for and against this ordinance. So I think it'll be beneficial to wait for at least that to happen. Also, just so you know, we're not knocking down the doors of City Hall trying to get these set down permits. We've asked for 3 in the last 8 months, so it's really not that. Plus, in the meeting that we had, we did even offer the city to come to our yard to review any coach that we are going to put into a park and let us know if it's good or bad or indifferent or whatever. And in that regard, we got some feedback that, they're real busy and they don't have, time to do this kind of stuff. We're willing to pay for a deputy inspector for some of those that don't know what that is. That's, when basically the city and us get together and hire a third-party person that's, not involved to do the inspections, and we incur that cost. So we're more than willing to do that. And basically tonight, we're just asking that you table this ordinance for now until we had some of those further discussions and input. And then lastly, I just want to say something because I want to defend myself, because I think some of the stuff that maybe city staff, no offense, is maybe misleading. But, one, we don't bring any coaches in the middle of the night. I've never have. I can't even find a truck driver that will bring one in the middle of the night. It's not safe. We get all our permits. We get all our move permits. Yes, in the past, we had some indiscretions, but we learned our lesson. We're doing our best now. That picture that you see up there that showed the red tag, Just so you know, that's not a red tag. That's from an eviction from the previous park that it was bought from. You know, the red tags are more, you know, red notices are more than just red tags. I specifically remember that one because Pam from code enforcement brought it up, and I went and looked at it, and it was for an eviction, not a red tag. You know, and I just want to invite any of you, staff, city council members, you're more than welcome to go to any of our 10 parks. You're more than welcome to stop and talk to our manager and ask to go see some of these, go inside and see some of these coaches. And yes, I'll agree with Ben. Sometimes the HCD and the city, it's hard to get together.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Josette. Followed by Mr. Tony Slake.
Good evening, I'm Joe Sutton. I live in Wildwood Canyon Mobile Home Estates, and this is such a confusing issue. I have waffled on it, and I'm still not settled. But I'm going to read what I have, even though Ben's comments tonight answered a few of my questions. First of all, I wanted to thank the city for sending Mr. Matlock to come and talk to YMRA at our meeting on Saturday. His intention was to introduce the ordinance and explain it and answer questions. And he did a fine job, and he conducted himself with dignity and professionalism in the face of some hostile outbursts from some of the audience. He did great. Overall, I'm pleased that this step was taken in the direction of transparency and dialogue with the citizens, and I hope we can continue to move in a positive direction, and I hope everybody will behave themselves. Concerning the temporary moratorium, I still have unanswered questions. For example, how many park owners are actually presenting problems with failure to comply with regulations, et cetera? I'm unsure about why a city ordinance needs to be put in place instead of dealing directly with the offenders involved via fines and correction orders, et cetera. Again, I really don't know how that would work, but it seems like if there's one person doing a lot of bad stuff, you should deal with that. Another sample question, if an individual mobile home resident owner loses their dwelling, let's say to fire or something, would this moratorium limit their options for replacing their unit with a given amount of any insurance payoff? If I were convinced that this 45-day limit on this moratorium would be upheld, now I'll extend that to 2 years because it sounds like it could go for 2 years. If I were convinced that that would be upheld, I'd be more inclined to support the passage of 466U tonight. Without that assurance, I really can't support it, and I ask you to exercise caution. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Tony Slake, followed by Miss Cindy Porter, maybe?
Good evening. Good evening, Tony Slake, former chairman of Yucaipa Mobile Home Residents Association. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, I'm just going to read what I have here. I'm here to speak in opposition of the proposal. Currently in place, you have incentives that lend to systematic upgrades to mobile home parks. Park owners can cost-effectively upgrade homes, sell them even to low-income residents, recover those costs, and do it again. There's no end to this cycle of upgrades. It should not be based on the age of the home, but rather on the quality and condition at the final inspection. That said, inspections and premature or unauthorized occupancy seem to be at the core of this. Considering references to inaccurate and misleading information, there is more to be said and still more discussion to be had. Some fact-checking is in order. How many people actually made complaints and how many of those complaints were actually verified? How many park owners are alleged to have done this, and why would every park owner be penalized for it? That makes them all guilty by association only. Despite becoming a concern to the city in the past months, the public has only recently become aware of this. Sorry about that. Okay, we've heard repeatedly that this has no impact or effect on current residents or their homes. As a resident, we do have concerns. We're impacted in the event of fire or other property damaging events, possible changes in insurance costs, replacement, the moratorium itself, and possibly of it becoming a permanent ordinance here. This does diminish our home values to the extent of being, possibly even being worthless, as they would not be allowed to be moved or replaced in Yucaipa. Beyond that, if other cities adopted similar policies, there'd be nowhere to go. Why would lenders even consider making a loan with those types of restrictions? The impact of this ordinance goes beyond what we see on the surface. I'm hoping we can talk about bringing in newer homes and existing homes. If inspections are an issue, let the park owners get a home inspection warranty through a city-approved home warranty company. Consider limiting how many and how often sit-downs can occur simultaneously, like for every 50 homes in a park, maybe let them do 2 or 3 until the final inspections are completed. Consider fining park owners when they allow residents to move in before the final inspections. And well, let's just talk about what's the best for everybody. And this policy needs this policy leads more to a decrease in affordable housing than an increase than it does in.
Thank you for your comments,
Yeah,
sir.
we'll lose affordable housing a little bit on
Sydney
that.
Porter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Followed by Peter Miller.
Hi, I'm opposed to your proposition that you cannot handle it through standard inspections. If UPC, NEC, UBC, and Title 24s cover most of everything that you're saying in here through your standard inspections when it comes to mobile home safety and mobile home quality. A lot of the older mobile homes do meet these considerations, and any mobile homes that are, quote, brought in the middle of the night, theoretically, by your inspector's standards, should be brought up to all those specifications. That's also including Title 24s that are required by the state of California and possibly by your city. This is both for residential homes, that's solid structures, and mobile homes. Secondly, I have a question that came to pass. What is the purpose of the multi-land use and allowing for multifamily units into the mobile home parks? Is this allowing the eviction of tenants within that park to spread throughout, thus increasing your infrastructure loads? I don't understand that one, where you're coming from on that. Answer, please.
We don't engage in dialogue. We'll take your questions and somebody will get back to you. Did you have any further comments?
That's it.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Peter Miller. Thank you. And followed by Mr. Mark Westwood.
Hi, Peter Millar. The way this ordinance was originally presented to me was that the city wanted to convert mobile home parks to condos, but apparently I was told different. So, and people with mobile homes older than 20 years would have no resale value if they sold them, and if they did possibly sell them, they'd have to sell them at a substantially reduced value. And I basically agree with this city councilman that this ordinance would make it more difficult for people, affordable housing, but that's the way I see it.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
All right.
Mr. Mark Westwood.
Members of the council, thank you for letting me address you. Mark Westwood, Crafton Hills Mobile Estates, Space 28. 466U is not 429. 466U seems reasonably decent if it is temporary and it's a 45-day moratorium. I don't think people need to be too alarmed, other than the fact that we need to protect our current mobile home residents. And we need to make a law that addresses the problem and the rule, not the exception. And when you have a few mobile home park owners or a few mobile homes that have been moved in, it seems to me that Mr. Matlock and the city should be able to address this without making an ordinance. But a 45-day ordinance to get things in order, to find things and figure out what you can do to fairly address this seems fine to me. And I don't think people really need to be that disturbed about it. However, make it, please, don't extend it, Keep it at a 45-day moratorium. And then let's address the fact that if you have a mobile home owner who loses their home in a fire or loses their home in a flood or something and they have to replace it, you have to look at the replacement value. Something 2010 or older is easier to find than something that's newer. So the older you get, the easier to find to bring one in. But there's a depreciation value between what the insurance company will pay and what the homes cost. And a brand new home is like $200,000 if you go out to, Cherry Valley or Banning or Beaumont and see those mobile homes. So let's try to protect our current mobile home owners and make the rule for the rule, not the exception. And I think you'll be all right. Just please keep it at a 45-day moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miller brought up something I want to ask about. If I'm understanding it correctly, this is about bringing mobile homes into a park. What if somebody wants to resale their 30-year-old coach that is in fine condition? Are we stopping that from happening?
No, they could sell it just as they could today.
Okay. Questions of staff?
Are we certain that it's going to be a 45-day?
So the initial moratorium per state law or urgency ordinance is only for 45 days. And then when that kind of time comes up, we'll take it back to city council, and city council can approve up to the full calendar year. With that, council can also amend it so it's only a couple months, but we'll have a report on kind of the efforts made to date as well to resolve it and perhaps what the solution is. It may vary. We're hoping that the discussions with HCD will be fruitful on it, and then depending on what the solution is, we may request that the ordinance be in place at least until we get the permanent solution codified too, and so that could be something that plays into it, where we have the easiest solution, but the effective date of that ordinance would be, after second reading, 30 days, and so it may be something where we try to bridge that gap too.
Are you going to be open for, like he was saying, that if their coach burnt down and, they only get a certain amount of money, what about the inspection of one that they're going to bring in if it's older? How can they afford something like that now?
So that is where, even kind of in our history, that was our original goal, was to try to have a pre-inspection for older units and being able to bring it in. That's where HCD said, hey, you don't have the authority to do it. But that is our goal, is to try to rerun that scenario with them and try to see if there's a way that we can make that work. Just because I think at the end of the day, that will be probably easier for assuring the right quality is being brought in rather than just the age limit itself. But just as kind of a general kind of rule of thumb, mobile homes are designed to be placed in a mobile home park. They're not necessarily meant to be moved around a whole bunch afterwards. And so it isn't as common that you see units being transferred around just because they're not an RV, they're meant to be placed. They're just manufactured offsite and then, brought in there. So they're not meant to be shipped around a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, so I got one question. Just for easy math. If they have a 30-year-old trailer and it burns to the ground, can they go out and buy another 30-year-old trailer to replace it?
So with the temporary ordinance as it's written, the answer would be no. It would be the 20 years older.
Well, in addition, the park owner of the park itself would have to approve that older unit coming in if it was one being replaced by a fire.
So if they approved it,
The property owner of the park has the right to approve or deny a resident's coach from coming into the park.
okay, so if they approve it, will the city approve it?
So as the ordinance is written now, the answer would be no, but that is something we can reassess with the update, at least working with HCD on some solutions. Our goal is with the report to kind of lay out kind of where the lay of the land can be and then draft up a solution from
So
there.
you're gonna be able to work all this out within 45 days?
I think we're hoping that we can at least have a game plan moving forward on what the state will allow us to do.
So we had Mr. Hess come up and say that red tag was not in fact a red tag. It was an eviction from the previous park, so that coach wasn't red tagged. So that's not true. The information we were presented here, that's not true. That coach was not red tagged. And he also said that they've only tried to set down 3 coaches in 8 months. That's not an emergency, in my opinion. That's not an emergency. And I don't really understand the difference between rehabbing a house that's sitting on a lot to refurb it, to rent it, or to take an old coach and refurbish it and bring it up to spec and rent that, because that represents a big part of our affordable housing element. And I don't want to limit what a park owner can do to interfere with that part of our housing element.
So I'll let David provide some input as well.
Mayor, Council, David Fredborg, building official here in Yucaipa. To address the red tags, I've personally seen 3, maybe 4 in the last year. Possibly that one might have been an eviction notice, but there are substandard red tags that are on some of them. A lot of them are coming in without any improvements to begin with, and they should actually be improved because they have a lot that they're sitting on right now that they could be working on them prior to set downs. And the issues with the livability and the building inspections and everything else is if they came to the city, we go out there 11 times during a remodel. HCD, admittedly, they don't have the manpower, and they are being presented permits that are saying we're changing windows and kitchen counters. They aren't saying we're moving walls, installing bathrooms where there weren't bathrooms before. So that's the reason we need the time, because we have been in constant dialogue with HCD, and I think we're close. And but so the inspections, which you're 100% right, Mr. Duncan, is if it was under building and safety, we would be out there, we would see it before they worked on it. As it sits now, the state can only see it after they're done. They don't have the manpower. And we have leaky walls, we have installed things. I'm taking pictures, sending them to HCD, offering our help. But we do need the time to work with them.
What is 45 days? Have you guys already started the process of building some type of ordinance, or what is 45 days going to do? And I respect you a lot, and I respect what you just said. But what's 45? What are we going to do? Are we going to go to the state and bargain with the state for them to do their part or do something different, or are we going to have a plan to go out there the minute it lands and look at the inside the wall? I mean, I don't understand what a moratorium is going to do. The existing process is working. It just sounds like it's giving us fits because it caused us a lot of extra work. Am I wrong about that?
I would probably disagree with that characterization. So the 45 days is ultimately what an urgency ordinance cap can be for the first review. And so the 45 days is purely a number of state law allows an urgency ordinance to go in effect for 45 days and then gets extended up to that 2-year mark. And so that's where the 45 days comes from. It isn't necessarily that we think we'll have all the world's problems solved along that. And then in terms of the coaches, we are getting complaints from residents that are living in it. We did visit one of the parks as an all agency, and a resident came out and said, "Hey, are you guys going to deal with, can you guys help with the living conditions I have inside the unit I'm renting because of the condition of how it is. And so we are getting complaints from residents that are at risk of, certainly if there's no permits, they're not supposed to be living in it. The solution is evicting them, and that's not necessarily something that they want to go through, but it is a precarious situation that I think a better solution can be had, and so that's all we're trying to achieve is to make sure that check and balance for the process is upheld, and whether or not the state will allow a little bit more flexibility on where their role ends and ours can begin to make sure that at least that's being done is what we're trying to achieve.
And if I could add one more thing to the number of coaches that are in process right now. The 3 number that Mr. Hess mentioned might be recent ones that they've started, but there's at least 12 to 14 that I can think of off the top of my head that are this case right now that we're talking about, where permits were started, but we haven't approved them for reasons, maybe setbacks or whatever, or they haven't gotten their state approvals. So it's a lot higher number than's been indicated. And
Those are occupied?
probably 75 to 80% of them are occupied without final permits. I'm saying probably. I'm happy to look up the actual numbers and present them to you.
So if my brief dive into our municipal code is accurate, we have city law that the owners of these parks are on the hook for. They need to obey the law of the land. It may not be the United States Federal Code or the state penal code or civil code, but this is the law of Yucaipa. How many citations are these park owners that are violating our laws receiving on a daily basis until they fill in their pocketbooks and stop breaking the law?
Code enforcement is pretty consistent and I won't say aggressive, but definitely pretty adamant in terms of their citations. That if someone knows what they're supposed to be doing and isn't, then code enforcement is issuing as many citations as they're authorized to do so per our administrative citation procedures.
I think we've taken a very aggressive stance with our solutions-oriented policing team to address those that refuse to obey the laws of the land. Property owners should not be any different in the city. So, if there's no further questions of staff, is there a motion to approve the not emergency, but urgency ordinance 466-U?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilman Thorpe, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Venable. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item number 19, the Youth Advisory Committee appointments by Ms. Sarah Martinez.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am here this evening as a staff liaison for the Youth Advisory Committee to recommend the appointments of 3 teen residents. With the recommended appointments this evening, the committee will have 12 members and will continue to recruit for the last remaining at-large position. So first, it is my pleasure to introduce Jaylin. She is currently a sophomore at Yucaipa High School with a strong 3.8 GPA. She is a student leader and is on the track team, as well as enjoys hip-hop dance off-site. Jaylin strives to be a positive role model and has been attending committee meetings since early last year. So at this time, I invite Jaylin to speak a few words, after which it'll be my distinct pleasure to introduce Isabella.
Hello, my name is Jaylin Osnaya, and the reason I'm here today is I want to join Youth Advisory. My goal in joining this program is to better my skills in organization, communication, and to be able to volunteer and help the teens of Yucaipa. In the future, I am not necessarily interested in being in the government field, but I do find it interesting how it works, and I would love to learn more about it while being in this program. The field I am interested in joining is the medical field, and I believe this program can help the things previously listed, as well as building relationships both professionally and personally in order to help the people of Yucaipa. I love how this program allows teens to be more active in the city, and I look forward into being part of it.
Thank you, Jaylin. Next, we introduce Miss Isabella. She is also a sophomore at Yucaipa High School with a solid 3.0 GPA. She has lived in Yucaipa for 3 years and has participated in the local police explorer program. Jalen has strong character and wants to actively contribute positively to the community. So now I introduce Isabella to step forward. Next, it will be my distinct pleasure to introduce Luke.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Isabella Prats. I'm a sophomore at Yucaipa High School. I am honored to stand before you today as a new member of the Youth Committee group. I am excited to embark on this journey with each and every one of you. I'm eager to both learn and contribute. Being a part of this committee offers me a unique opportunity for personal growth and leadership development. I am eager to share my ideas, perspectives, and talents to help advance our collective goals, whether it's through organizing events, fostering connections, or advocating for important causes. I am dedicated to making a difference along each of my team members. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella. Last but certainly not least, I introduce Luke. So he is a freshman at Yucaipa High School with an impressive 4.2 GPA. He was a student leader in middle school and has continued his efforts in high school through participation on the Yucaipa mountain bike and cross-country teams. I invite Luke to say a few words, after which we'll conclude our presentation, but city staff are available for questions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Luke McClintock, and I've just recently applied for Yucaipa's Youth Advisory Committee. I went to my first meeting on May 1st, and I'm already certain the committee will help Yucaipa's growing youth and teen populations, including myself. I've applied to the committee looking to enhance and grow my leadership and formal socialization skills, my confidence, experience, and my sentiments are a rapidly changing hometown. Being a member of the committee, I'm hoping to gain the fulfillment of helping fellow youth in need, a louder voice as one of the many teenagers in Yucaipa, and more opportunities to help others. Help is a large factor in the joining of my committee, or of the committee, as I can already see an issue I may be able to aid with. For instance, the Mountain Grove Plaza in Redlands is a beloved and prominent spot for teens in Yucaipa to hang out, shop, and dine at. But Redlands can be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes away from us, and there aren't any closer attractions like that of the Tilly's, Target, or Nordstrom Rack in Mountain Grove. Investing in places similar to this can help teens get out of the house more, but be closer at the same time. If this infrastructure is put in, Yucaipa teens can have a pull factor close to home. This is the most universal issue for teens in Yucaipa, but it can be fixed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Luke. Are there any questions pertaining any of the appointees this evening or for the Youth Advisory Committee?
Where are the parents at? Can we have you stand up, please? You're certainly doing it right. So thank you for all the work. And to you, strong leaders, I'm always impressed, Sarah. You're always bringing us what always gives me hope for our future. I'm certain we're going to see several of our youth advisory appointees sitting on this dais in the future, true leaders in our community. I have no questions. Are there any questions of staff?
Nope.
No,
I'll make a motion.
Does that fill up the roster?
We have one more remaining position, but as of this evening, I did receive an application, so I will be reaching out to that person shortly.
I think I heard a motion over here by our Mayor Pro Tem and our seconded by Councilman Garner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Then there are no opposed. Let's get a picture with you folks down here. Congratulations. Item number 20, Mobile Home Park Committee appointment, Ms. Jennifer Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Mobile Home Park Committee has one vacant position that represents a resident living under rent control. The city advertised this one vacancy in the Newsmere, and we received 2 applications. One from Diane Elmore, who lives in Valley View Mobile Home Park, and Zilla Sander, who lives in Wishing Well. Staff recommends that the City Council review the applications and nominate and appoint one applicant to the committee. And the first committee meeting will be held on May 29th at 3 p.m. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. We do have speakers. Mr. Tony Slake. We have Zilla Sander and Dr. Hanson Wong. We locked them out.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. Tony Slake, 3300 Calamasa Boulevard. During the April 22nd City Council meeting, there were objections to the appointment of Julie Polly of Western Manufactured Housing Communities, or WMA. WMA is established as a 501c6 organization that is formed to serve their members only. With revenues of $3.9 million in 2023, there are well-funded and powerful lobbyists. WMA's history has demonstrated that their mission is to maximize profits for park owners while decreasing controls and resident protections and rent ordinances, often at the expense and even the detriment of park residents. That is in contrast to a 501c4 like the Yucaipa Mobile Home Residents Association, that is set up for the purpose of social welfare and exclusively for the promotion of social interests or the good of the people. Yucaipa modified qualifying rules specifically to accommodate Julie Polly's appointment to the committee. It should be publicly known if Julie Polly is on the committee as a paid representative of WMA or what her association might be. Also, in all fairness, if the City Council is going to allow for an industry representative to serve with lobbyists fighting to reduce resident protections and maximize park profits, it's only fair that park residents also have state representation through an organization member like GSMOL, or Golden State Manufactured Homeowners League, also a 501c4 nonprofit serving the good of the people. I'm asking for a rebalancing of the committee to reflect the interests of all the parties involved, so it's even, and allow park residents the equal opportunity of statewide representation through a representative from GSMOL or a similar organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll have our applicant go right before we do the vote. Dr. Hanson Wong, can we have you first, and then we'll have Ms. Sander.
Hanson Wong from Yucaipa. I am a little concerned about the discomfort of some of the mobile home residents by adding this third person. And even though this is an advisory committee and not exactly a decision-making committee, I feel that some of the advice from a lobbyist might not be necessarily in the best interests of our city, but that's just how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zilla Sander, is it Zia? Zilla.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Zilla Sander, and I am a retired park resident of Wishing Well Mobile Home Park. I live at 13063 5th Street, space 72 in Yucaipa. And my family and I have lived here for approximately 17 years, and we love it here. I heard about the 5th position being open to join the Mobile Home Residential Committee at the last council meeting, and I was interested. Thank you for considering me. To tell you a little bit about myself, my background is in administration, management, sales, counseling, and ministry. I am a people person. So in 2018, I was the on-site manager for Wishing Well Mobile Home Park, and I worked for 2 owners. It was sold twice while I worked there, and then I retired in 2021. I learned a lot managing this park. It was a hands-on position at that time. And my concerns are genuine and for the residents of our park in the mobile home community. I'm interested in serving and supporting any way I can to address issues and coming to resolutions that would benefit us and all parties involved. One of the things that concern me is any fear or intimidation or false information being put out there to silence anyone and to not be heard. I think facts and good communication is key so we can have a true understanding how corporate decisions and rules being implemented affect us, the residents. Being an ex-manager and still a resident has given me some advantage to know to how some things work behind the scenes. The issues in general are these. 1, we all want to live in a nice and safe mobile home park. 2, we want to be able to afford where we live and not have huge spikes in rent increases. We very much appreciate rent control. 3, that the maintenance issues are taken care of for the residents and they get done in a timely manner. Some of our residents, mainly the elderly, are afraid to complain because they fear for losing their home and being evicted. And they're good tenants who pay their rent. Number 4 is that we can use and enjoy all the amenities listed in the signed contracts, like the clubhouse, use of a pool, and laundry facilities, things like that. And these, I believe, are the main issues and problems we are dealing with. We would like to see them all resolved through the process. My heart is invested in our park, our residents, and our community. And I would like to be involved in this process to try to make it a better place.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Is there a motion?
I nominate Zilla Sander.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second made, or motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Congratulations, ma'am, and welcome to the committee. Moving on to item number 21. This is going to be by Mr. Corey Gorham. Adoption of resolution supporting initiative 23-0017A1, known as the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. And I see our chief of police moving into position as well. This is
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Corey Gorham, Management Analyst. Tonight, staff is recommending that Council adopt a resolution of support for the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. This act aims to improve public safety by reforming certain aspects of Prop 47 and is on track to be on the November ballot for voter approval. In 2014, voters approved Prop 47, whose stated purpose was to ensure that prison spending was focused on violent and serious offenses. To effectuate this purpose, Prop 47 reclassified some drug possession offenses and some nonviolent property crimes where the value of the offense did not exceed $950 as misdemeanors instead of felonies. Unfortunately, since its passage, California has experienced significant unintended consequences. For example, the state has seen homelessness increase by 51%, while it has decreased 11% nationally. Drug addiction and the fentanyl crisis now kills 2 to 3 times the number of people than car accidents. Theft and smash and grab robberies are becoming more prevalent as the consequences have been reduced to what is seemingly a slap on the hand. To address many of these unintended issues, the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act proposes to restore accountability for theft, enhance penalties for fentanyl and hard drugs, and incentivize treatment for those addicted to drugs. Specifically, this act will reclassify theft for an offender with 2 prior convictions as a felony regardless of the value of the stolen property. To address smash and grab robberies, it will authorize judges to impose enhanced penalties when 2 or more offenders cause a property loss of $50,000 or more. In the case of multiple thefts, it will permit the value of stolen property to be added together so that an offender can be charged with felony theft instead of petty theft. To address fentanyl, the act will reclassify fentanyl as a hard drug similar to heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. It will authorize judges to sentence hard drug traffickers to state prisons instead of local county jails, and it will allow greater consequences, including a charge of murder, to be brought against dealers and suppliers should someone die as a result of their trafficking. To address drug addiction, the act will create a new class of crime called a treatment-mandated felony. For a third or subsequent drug possession charge, individuals will be given the option to attend drug and mental health treatment. If the treatment is successfully completed, the felony will be expunged and the person will not receive jail time. If the treatment is refused, the offender will receive jail time. As staff, we believe this initiative brings some common sense solutions to the problems we're facing today. This act has bipartisan support and is endorsed by over 35 various coalitions, chambers of commerce, and associations, including the California District Attorneys Association and the California Police Chiefs Association. As far as the current status, over 900,000 voter signatures have been submitted to add the initiative to the November 2024 general election. County and state officials are in the process of validating those signatures before it is officially placed on the ballot. That concludes my portion of the presentation, and we do have Captain Walker here to speak on this topic.
Well, good evening, council. I can't do a much better job than Corey just did going over this, but this is obviously something that is very important to us. It's very important to the sheriff of San Bernardino County, Sheriff Dykes. He sent this out to all his chiefs of police and all of his areas, as well as his county stations, to make sure that this information was getting out to the voting public, getting out to the residents of the communities that we serve so that they can be informed. And just the name of this initiative itself, I think, lends itself to that. If you recall, Prop 47 was named the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, which quite honestly did nothing to make the schools or the neighborhoods any safer. It made them quite the opposite. I do want to expand on some of the numbers and the polling numbers just to show just how much support this has gotten so far. That the people who put this together were able to get during their while they're doing their research and doing their polling. And they mentioned that, you know, since Prop 47 was enacted, there's been at least 20 bills to address the unintended consequences of Prop 47, and at least 7 bills that were aimed at addressing the retail theft aspect of it. We all saw in the news the smash and grab, the takeover, theft rings that were happening, and all of those bills died in the committee. And then, so then we shifted gears, right? And we tried to look at the retail theft aspect and tackle it from an organized crime effort. But as we found out, to prosecute it in that manner was extremely tough. And even our major counties who experienced the most of those issues had prosecutions in the single digits using that organized crime effort. So really we just weren't getting any headway, and it was just getting worse and worse. They did a 2023 retail security survey through the National Retail Foundation, and of those people polled, 78% of people felt that organized retail theft was more of a priority than in the previous year. 72% felt that there was more violence during these criminal acts. Another 72% felt that homeless concerns were more of a concern over the previous years. And then external theft, so not your organized crime, just your regular petty thefts from businesses. 68% of those folks felt that it was more of a priority. So we're starting to see the effects of these crimes to our business owners, our retail owners, our small business owners, really starting to feel the consequences of Prop 47. 45% of stores had to reduce their operating hours. 29% had to reduce or alter the availability of their in-store products. I mean, if anyone shops at Target or Walmart, you've seen that a lot of those products are now locked up, and you have to get help from a store associate to get access to those items because of the thefts. And 28% of the respondents reported having to actually close specific store locations due to the amount of thefts that were happening. So as Corey mentioned, it has bipartisan support. It's both sides of the aisle are on board with this measure. Hopefully we'll see some traction here. We can get it on the November ballot. The sheriff feels that if this were to pass, that it'd be one of the most, if not the most significant step in the right direction that we've seen as a profession in the last 10 years. When we talk about how this bill is labeled, a lot of thought and effort went into that. And there was polling done, to see how people felt about the labeling of the bill and how it spells it out, not just the title, but how the bill spells it out, which would go to the voters. And of the people who were polled, 70% felt that if the bill was presented with this name and with this description of what the bill will do, 70% said that they would vote yes, 7% were undecided, and 23% would vote no as it's labeled and written here. So with that, I have some other data if you'd like to hear it, but that's it. I do want to mention, I just looked it up before council meeting tonight. Almost 1 million signatures going into this, which was quite a feat. They needed 500,000 to get it on the ballot. As Corey mentioned, they're still going through the validation process, but quite a significant amount of signatures and people supporting it. As I mentioned, some of the major donors to this, you have Walmart, Target, Macy's, Home Depot, grocery store chains, 7-Eleven, a plethora of law enforcement agencies, some of our tribal groups in the state, including San Manuel, and then we have businesses and private donors as well helping fund this effort. In addition, I know Corey mentioned the California Police Chiefs Association is supporting this, but also the California State Sheriff's Association is supporting this, along with the Los Angeles Association of Deputy District Attorneys, our district attorneys here locally, both Riverside and San Bernardino County. Like I said, businesses, mayors of municipalities, councils of municipalities are all lending their support to this group. So I appreciate you giving us the time to help educate on this bill. Hopefully, we'll see some good progress on this in November. But I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had them.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions of staff?
No, I just have a comment. I think this is a great start. I think it probably would have been easier to repeal 47. But I'm that guy where if you steal a pack of bubble gum from Rite Aid, you should go to prison or you should go to jail for that. So I think this is a great start, and I hope we can get even tougher than this. That's all I got.
I think that brings up an interesting point. So to change Prop 47, the legislature could change it, but they could only change it if they were reducing the penalties. To increase any of the penalties imposed by Prop 47, it has to go to the voters. So that's part of the reason why it died every time there was requested changes, because those requested changes were always to increase the penalties for some of these crimes, and it just wasn't getting any traction in Sacramento.
So this is huge. I think I'm glad it mentions homelessness, but doesn't exactly address, from what I read, homelessness aspect. But I think, and I've said this before, I find it telling that you can draw a line from the rise in homelessness to the passing of Prop 47 almost 10 years ago. In Yucaipa at the time, when I was working up here, we had one unhoused individual. His name was Mike. But it was also illegal to have, it was a felony to have a usable quantity of methamphetamine in your pocket. Now, our deputies in Yucaipa, our deputies across, law enforcement across the state don't even take people to jail for having, several grams of meth, heroin, and cocaine in their pocket. They can't even arrest them. They don't get booked into jail. And yeah, surprise, when you show up to work high, you get fired. And when you get fired for drug-related offenses, you don't get hired again. And then you can't pay your mortgage. Then you lose your house. It's almost like having no consequence for drug use causes homelessness. It's crazy. And yet our brilliant lawmakers almost 10 years ago couldn't foresee this consequence. It's baffling to me. Oregon did a similar law 3 years ago. It took them only 3 years to realize how foolish it was, and they passed HB 4002 this year, 2 months ago, to overturn what they did as relates to drugs and theft. So they beat us to the punch by, goodness, almost 7 years. It's too bad. Madam Reporter, I see you out there in the audience. Whether this passes this council or not, please shed light on this matter in your newspaper. The voters need to know how dangerous Prop 47 was and how detrimental our society is because of those reckless laws. And hopefully the voters will speak in November and bring some consequence to this madness that we've been living in for the last nearly 10 years. With that, I'll motion approval for the adoption of the resolution supporting the initiative. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilman Thorpe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 22, Corey, you're back up. Resolution number 2024-16, establishing the 2024 legislative platform.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a recommendation to adopt a resolution establishing the 2024 legislative platform for Yucaipa. So a legislative platform is a policy document that establishes a set of principles, priorities, and positions that guide the city's legislative agenda and advocacy efforts. The purpose of this document is to create a plan that positions the city to be able to take advantage of funding opportunities and provide input on legislation in both Sacramento and DC. Each year, thousands of bills are introduced into the state legislature and U.S. Congress that can impact the city of Yucaipa and its residents. The legislative process can move fast as deadlines approach or urgent matters arise, and having a legislative platform will equip and direct staff to advocate for the city's interest when time is of the essence. Currently, staff brings individual actions to council, but there are times when we miss an opportunity to engage due to the timing of the next council meeting. If approved, staff will be able to quickly respond to requests on a particular piece of legislation that may positively or negatively impact the city, so long as it aligns with the guiding principles and policy statements of this document. The legislative platform is presented in 3 parts. The first section contains the guiding principles, which provide overall direction and establish the foundation for policy preferences. These principles are preserving local control. A one-size-fits-all government does not benefit our city. Policies that enhance local control will be supported. Number 2 is enhancing public safety. Public safety is the most important function of government, and the city will support policies that strengthen law enforcement. Number 3, supporting infrastructure investments. The city will support investments that promote efficient transportation and flood safety and will oppose efforts to cut funding. Number 4 is promoting fiscal stability. The city will support any legislative proposal that promotes the city's fiscal stability. The second section identifies priority projects that need attention of both the state and federal government. In recent years, the city has been successful in obtaining congressional earmarks, which are direct federal funding for projects. The city will continue to work with our state and federal lobbyists to pursue funding for these projects. The third part of the platform is the individual policy statements, which provide the focused directives. The individual statements made reflect goals and objectives for the various city departments. These directives are organized into several sections based on the function of government. I'm not going to read through every single directive listed, but I will provide some highlights. So under the category of public safety and criminal justice, the city will support efforts that regulate the sale or manufacture of dangerous drugs. We will support efforts that prevent driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. We will support additional judges for the San Bernardino Superior Court, and we will support efforts to grant cities more authority to prosecute misdemeanors under their municipal codes. Under the opposed section, the city would oppose efforts that attempt to allow early release of prisoners, efforts that reclassify felonies as misdemeanors, and efforts to restrict where holders of a CCW license may carry. Under the category of transportation/public works, the city would support legislation that would increase funding for local transportation projects and joint planning efforts and projects with Yucaipa's border cities, which will relieve traffic congestion. Under the housing, community, and economic development category, the city would support program and policies to allow jurisdictions to transfer RENA allocations, funding to create new planning programs and objective standards, and it would support efforts to simplify state statutes. Under the opposed category or section, we would oppose efforts to restrict local control over land use planning, zoning, and development, and any unfunded mandates and efforts that add significant administrative efforts to staff, such as duplicative reports and new obligations to state agencies. Under the community services section, the city would support legislation and funding opportunities that help cities build better, stronger communities by providing funding to improve air, water, parks, and open space. And we would oppose efforts that may erode that funding. And under the general government category, the city would support increased flexibility for the utilization of generated revenues. We would support changing the sales tax allocation for online purchases from the county pool to the city where the purchase is made. And the city would oppose efforts to borrow, redirect, or redistribute local funds from the cities to the state. And we would also oppose efforts of legislation that oppose further restrictions on employer/employee negotiations. If approved, administration of the platform will fall to the city manager or whomever he designates. As previously mentioned, this platform will streamline the city's advocating efforts under city council direction. As legislation is either supported or opposed within the guidelines, the tracking section of the platform will be completed and council will be provided with regular updates. Any issue of significance that warrants council action will be brought forward as a standalone resolution for discussion and approval, such as the previous act that we just looked at. And lastly, the platform will be revisited and brought back to council in December in preparation for the new legislative session, which starts in January 2025. With that, my presentation is concluded, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Corey. And this kind of gives you further discretion to work with our existing lobbyists, both in the state capitol and our nation's capital, to work towards these goals that we've already established. That's accurate?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And we have those lobbyists that we had, I think they zoomed in to a conference call a couple months ago to discuss their work and how they're working with the congressman's office, the senator's office, and both the state and the federal government. That's right?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. Is there any questions of staff?
So did we have a 2023 legislative platform?
I don't believe so, no, sir.
So this is something drafted by the city attorney or by management
This
here?
is drafted by the Governmental Affairs Office.
Any further questions? No. Motions? I'll move approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Garner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Motion dies 2-3. Moving on to item number 23, Trevor Benson, fiscal year 24-25 Sheriff's Schedule A contract.
Excuse myself.
Mayor, I'm sorry, before we move on, can I get clarification on the vote for the last item?
It was voted yay by myself and I believe Councilman Garner, nay by Mayor Pro Tem Venable, Councilman Thorpe, and Councilman Duncan.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Benson.
With that, I'm going to
Mayor.
step out for item number 23.
And Councilman Thorpe is excusing himself from this as he works for the county.
Can you put it into the record that he works for the sheriff's department?
I'm sorry, County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you.
We ready?
Ready.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Today I'm here to present item number 23, which is the fiscal year 24-25 contract between the city and the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department for professional law enforcement services. Since the city's incorporation in 1989, the city has always contracted its law enforcement services with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. It's an amazing organization with dedicated members and a mission and vision which is in line with that of our citizens and our city. This police services contract, which is your attachment number 1, is approximately $464,000 over the previous and most recent 23-24 contract, and that increase is based on a variety of factors, but mostly liability bonding. Staff is requesting council authorize the city manager to execute this agreement between the city and the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in an amount of $13,309,409, and I am available for any questions should the council have any.
Questions of staff?
Is that $1 million over last year?
No, sir, $464,000, roughly.
The blanket of safety of which we sleep under is expensive.
Safety is expensive, sir.
All
Do
right.
I need to make a motion?
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by our Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Garner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. We can bring back our councilman. Thank you, Public Safety Manager Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver.
Moving on to item number 24, special event permit application, Uptown Friday Nights by Ms. Megan Wolf, Director of Community Services. Ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The item before you this evening is a special event permit application submitted by the Yucaipa Valley Chamber of Commerce to conduct a series of events on Friday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m., beginning Friday, May 24th through September 20th, for a total of 18 Fridays. The location of the event will be California Street, north of Yucaipa Boulevard and south of Avenue A. Per Ordinance 394, City Council must approve or deny special event permit applications that request permission to sell alcohol on city property and applications that are requesting street closures or traffic management. This application is requesting both. If the City Council approves the applicant's request, staff will route the special event permit application to the appropriate department heads for review and approval, and will work with the applicant to obtain all necessary documentation. This documentation will include a signature page from all land or business owners where the closure will take place, as well as payment for the cost of the street closures. As a condition of the special event permit application, 50% or more of land or business owners must approve of the street closure. This concludes my report this evening, and I can answer any questions you may have. Also, please note the applicant is here should you wish to speak with them.
Thank you, Megan. Is there, I'm looking through the application and we're gonna have police there?
At this time, we are not requiring that police are there due to the anticipated attendance of 200 people.
Did we have this before?
Hold on a second. Let's take it one at a time. This is gonna be shutting down a roadway?
Yes, sir.
We don't need police to shut down a roadway?
The Public Works Department will take care of the road closures.
And is this gonna be protected by our grant-funded bollards?
There will be bollards on the thank you. I was so close. I was so close to getting that right.
This south side?
Thank you, sir. The south side.
Avenue A.
Avenue A. There are not bollards at Yucaipa Boulevard and California Street, but there will be road closure signs.
Signs?
Yes, A-frames and
Penetrable from vehicle signs.
chromes. Yes, sir.
Yes?
Wait, what?
Impenetrable from a motor vehicle signs?
Can I elaborate?
Yeah.
So the concern, he has the same concern I have. Do you have something there to prevent any kind of large vehicle from vehicle ramming, running over the occupants and the vendors on either side?
Well, the
No.
bollards on the
The
south
bollards
side.
are on one side, so on the Yucaipa side, if I were to take a big 350 lifted monster truck and come driving down California Street, would there be something to prevent me from doing that?
Not at this time, but we can make that a requirement of the application, and then add the associated cost for that requirement. Meaning, there would need to be a police vehicle parked
Something-
there
something
during the
large.
duration of the event.
And I would recommend, I mean, you could look at it or talk to the sheriff's department, but I would recommend both sides, the exit and the entrance of that roundabout leading down California, southbound on California, in case they were to go the wrong way. That way, hopefully we ensure the safety of our attendees and vendors. That was what I was gonna ask, what he brought up. And then, do you mind a little bit more?
Not at all.
Okay, so just for clarification, on the staff notes, and you just said it a minute ago, that it's north of Yucaipa Boulevard and south of Avenue A. It's between the Yucaipa Boulevard and Avenue A, correct?
Yes,
Okay, on California Street.
on California Street.
Okay, just want to make sure, because that's the way it looked, but I was confused on a couple of things. The other thing, if we're going to have a beer garden, correct?
The applicant has requested to have a beer garden, that is correct.
That would be another recommendation, that we probably have law enforcement there if we're gonna have a beer garden, even if it's under a certain number, if we're not gonna have security. I think we should have some sort of security presence.
Yes, sir.
So with the applicant, and that's not necessarily on the city side, but they probably should get with the sheriff's department or a security company and have at least somebody there to kind of make sure that we don't have a whole bunch of issues.
Upon completion of tonight's meeting, whichever way that council chooses to vote, we will take the feedback from the council members should the council approve this item. And then the department head or the contact for the sheriff's department that reviews special event permit applications will review the notes that state they'd like a vehicle at both the entrance and exit of California Street and security at the event due to approval of an ABC, or if an ABC license is approved by ABC.
There was just, I mean, it was almost like 20 years ago that I was down there in high school, and there was fights and stuff. And, I just think it's prudent that we have a presence at these events, especially because I don't think there was alcohol served at the market nights from years past. But I'm not opposed to this, but I do want to make sure we're doing it the right way and with safety in mind.
Agreed.
Is it possible for Public Works to park a vehicle at Yucaipa Boulevard and at the end there at Adams? Instead of having some type of bollards or structures in the street, can you park a vehicle there? Would that stop a?
So we do have bollards already at Avenue A, yes? Okay, so Avenue A and California Street already have bollards that are preventing northbound traffic from assaulting any pedestrians. The concern is as you are going northbound California to the exit and on the incoming traffic coming into California Street from the north, those two areas are vulnerable to vehicular attack with any would-be criminals or horrible people.
But to answer your question, yes, anything large. So it could be a tractor, it could be a dump truck, it could be a panel van, it could be something large that would hopefully prevent anything from getting deeper into where all the occupants are. That's the
I
idea.
would just like noted that Public Works doesn't work Friday evenings. We do have a ranger on staff, but that would incur some additional cost to have a Public Works vehicle parked there and then for the duration, but.
I wouldn't oppose putting the burden on the applicant to put cars there, but something that's maybe not a smart car. Those are too small. But something, a formidable opponent to the F-350 monster that Councilman Thorpe had just described. Something like that.
They could rent those big containers that you see on the freeway, and they could fill it with 300 gallons of water if they have access to a spigot, and they could fill it up ahead of time, which takes time to set it up, fill it, drain it. But something that was going to, 300 or 400 gallons of water in a couple of those K-rails or whatever you want to call them. There's a proper name, it's escaping right now. That's also another avenue, but just something to prevent, make it harder for a bad person, a bad actor to carry out something like that.
Mr. Mayor, if this item is approved, then when we review the traffic control plan from an engineering perspective, we'll ensure that there is some type of barricade in place to prevent what you're happening from what you're saying happen.
And then should maybe the respectful request of an extra patrol submitted at briefings prior to these dates for our patrol deputies to show some love up to our uptown.
Is there any money left in the in-kind contributions for police presence?
There's no money left for fiscal year '24. However, the applications are still open and the applicant can apply for funds for fiscal year '25, which that item will be brought to council later this fiscal year for allocation for the following fiscal year.
But does that kill the program? The cost of barricades, the cost of having police presence there?
That'll be up to the applicant. We'll make sure that we get all those costs and describe them to the applicant, and then they'll have to determine what those finances are.
And how do we do it before? Because there was a time when we had a market night from May through, right after Music and Arts all the way through September, and we were closing down Yucaipa Boulevard from 2nd Street all the way to Adams. And there were 80 booths there back in 2012. How did we do it then? Did we have in-kind for the police? Did we have, how do we do it then?
The time that you're talking about, up until COVID, the city was a partner with this event, and the city took on the cost to close roads, to provide police services, to pay for entertainment. At this time, the city is not a partner in this event, and therefore those costs are passed on to the applicant.
And I'm not trying to make it uncomfortable for the applicant. I'm not saying I don't support the idea of having it. It's just I want to make sure our people are safe. That's my concern.
Agreed.
Well, with only 28 booths and you add too much cost to it, that kills the project. There's only 28 booths in this program, this layout, which is not very many booths, not that many vendors. So adding too much overhead with security might in fact kill the project. Am I off base on that? Chamber of Commerce? Or Megan?
I think if the applicant maybe should, if it's appropriate, should come to the mic so that those listening can hear.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to answer any question that you have. I'm Stacy Boisrink. I'm president of the Yucaipa Chamber of Commerce.
So my question is, if we have to supply police presence to barricade the streets and/or supply security, what is the cost of that for what, 4 hours, 3 hours?
Depending on if the approval happens, we'll go over all of that with Megan and see if there's something that we need to cut. We've discussed cutting the beer garden, but then that helps revenue for the chamber. We would have it in a location where we do have security, just as we have beer gardens when we have Music and Arts Festival, Winterfest, Autumn Fest, all of those things. So it will still be the same type of event as those.
I'm not saying that, I don't think it's impossible for you guys to find a large vehicle to park in those spots, and I think that would accommodate the concerns for myself and Councilman Thorpe. I don't think it's gonna cost that much more, or I don't think it would cost anything. People own vehicles that are on the chamber that have, they're moving large items, or they're members of the commerce and they have businesses that require large vehicles. I think if you park them there behind the road closed sign, you'll have put my mind at ease as it relates to security. That's something I'm not confident on the cost of, but it would certainly, especially if we're selling alcohol, making sure that people are within the designated areas for the alcohol, not wandering into communities there, and thereby having any, drunkards passing out on people's front lawns if we can avoid it. Agreed.
We do have some chamber members that have access to the bigger barriers, things like Councilman Thorpe was saying with the big barrels in the water and all that stuff. So we do have access to some of those things. As far as security, it would be designated where the mural is on California Street, that little parking area right there, so far enough away from where people can just walk around the corner and take their alcohol and all of that. We will have some type of security there to cover any of the concerns, because we have those same concerns. You know, we want to make sure that everybody's safe.
Sure. I think that, and we just, like I said, lean on our sheriff's department, maybe not on a contract basis to be married to the event, but just, we know how to do extra patrols and make sure the presence is there. Perhaps even, well, I'll let strategy deal with the strategy, folks. That's not my job today. Okay, any other questions for staff or for the applicant?
I move approval.
There's a motion by Councilman Duncan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Thorpe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor,
We have public comment.
public comments. Thank you.
Oh, never mind.
I got ahead of myself.
I'll retract it.
We're gonna go back on that vote for just a quick second. Carol Carrillo, did you want to speak on the matter? I see that you were in favor of it. Followed by Willie Cardinal.
Was I being called to speak or not? I'm confused. Was I called to speak or not?
Carol, you were
Yes.
called to speak, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Carol Carrillo. I own Timeless Pages, the book place on California Street. I've owned it for almost 6 years now. I was there during another time when we did have the market there, and many of the Yucaipan residents had looked forward to it and were very disappointed when it stopped. Would be happy to have it there again because I think it will draw more business to us. But not only that, it will offer a place for the youth and other people to go to during Friday night. So it'll open up some community gathering also, a place to go to so they don't have to go to Riverside. So I'm very much in favor, and thank you for agreeing to it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Willie?
Hi there, my name's Willie Cardinal. Thank you for giving me this moment. I am the co-owner of both Monstros and Roundabout Sweets and Treats. And based off of the street events that we've had, it's such a substantial increase in revenue that we really do need to have this just to keep us afloat. So that's it. That's
And Monstros,
Monstros
new
Social.
ownership, right?
Right. Yeah, we picked that up in actually in August, and we just celebrated in January our 1 year over at Roundabout. So there's a lot of work. You know, we've been doing a lot to try to keep that going, and we're bringing tourists in. So the chatter is there. We talked to a lot of people, and they're all excited about coming out and being with us.
I know there were some folks that were avoiding Monstro subs from the last owner. So new owners, not
Yep.
the same folk.
New
Come out-
owners.
Come out and buy some sandwiches from Monstro subs. They're delicious, and it's not the same owners. All right,
Thank
thank you.
you.
All right,
That was a public service announcement.
that was a public service announcement. Tony Worthy. I think you're from the Monstro sub shop. Okay.
Smart man. My name is Tony Worthy, and that is my mother that just spoke, and I am part owner of Monstro Sub Shop. And while I haven't personally been a member of this community for very long, I can tell that there's a lot of pride and a lot of unity here. And being that everyone know the previous owners, I can tell that there's a lot of unity by everyone knowing the stance that they had. Going beyond with what we have in front of us, I agree that the council has a stance with the safety concerns as well as I do. As a business owner, I focus not only on the businesses that are around me, but also my employees and my customers. That's a very big concern for me. So I completely understand that and I agree with it. I find that having the market nights, again, will be a positive impact for all benefactors, including our great city of Yucaipa. It is crucial to drive business to the old uptown Yucaipa, not only for the businesses, but for the history of Yucaipa that is integral, I feel. And it's a beautiful city, and it has a lot to offer. So again, we have a lot of people that are people that come from LA, San Diego, and they have come for Roast of the Dead, and they've also come for Monstros. And I feel that it's a great compliment to have those market nights. So I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mark Westman. I think you're talking more here than you do at your day job.
Yes. My name is Mark Westwood, and I was the market manager in downtown Yucaipa, uptown Yucaipa, from 2003 to 2006. So I know a little bit about what's entailed, and it was from the south part of the street. And we parked trucks in my van and everything else, and we're able to block that intersection. So that's a good thing. A little bit concerned that we have alcohol and no police presence. When I had the market night, and I had a lot more people there, we had like 150 booths in those years. We had to have 2 Yucaipa Sheriff's Department at $344 a piece per night to be there. And I tell you, I was grateful they were there because there were incidences. There are incidents. Just add people and water and you've got problems. So I really, really recommend somehow or other you have at least one police officer there. There's only 200 people there. But the other thing you spoke about kids, we at that time, and I was a big champion of this, passed an ordinance in the city of Yucaipa that said the kids had to go home by 8 o'clock because they were causing such a ruckus with skateboards and everything else. So that ordinance, I believe, is still in place. You have to take that into consideration as well. Yeah, entertainment, that sort of thing. I encourage you guys, good luck, good for you guys to do it, and I support it, but you have to keep those things in mind that, those are real things you have to deal with. Alcohol, kids, security, and before you pass that, I think you should have those things in place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mary, I saw you up here earlier, last speaker. Don't call me out like that, Mary.
I do it out of great respect. My name is Mary Reuter. I am a resident of the North Bench, and I have a business on California Street. Today I am speaking as the Secretary of the Board of Directors for the Yucaipa Valley Chamber of Commerce. And we are quite aware of some of the issues that may happen with our market night. If you have lived in Yucaipa for 10 years or more, you know that the Yucaipa Valley Chamber of Commerce held Uptown Friday nights for a number of years. I was a vendor there until I had my store, and it was quite a successful event. So the Yucaipa Valley Chamber of Commerce has a lot of experience with this. The board of directors for the chamber is new. This year, we have a totally new board of directors and new management, as y'all well but know, because they were introduced. We are absolutely committed to doing the work necessary to promote businesses in Yucaipa and bring business back to the uptown. Cognizant of the concerns of some of the businesses on Yucaipa Boulevard, the board decided that the best place to hold Uptown Friday nights again would be on California Street, between the Boulevard and Avenue A. We feel like that would effectively draw customers to those businesses as well as the vendors there, while minimizing the impact of street closures, which were the concerns of the Yucaipa Boulevard businesses. I know a lot of this because I was the chair of the Uptown Business Association, and we surveyed the businesses to talk about bringing a market night back. To this end, because this will be helping the chamber become financially solvent long-term, we've submitted all the paperwork. Now, we are aware that there are some concerns and there's opposition to our proposal, but the opposition, we believe, is based on misinformation and falsehoods. Concerns include the fact that some vendors may not want to work with a particular coordinator who happens to be our president of the chamber because she has had failed markets that were in Uptown. This is absolutely false. While Ms. Boiserank is an event coordinator as one of her businesses in Yucaipa. She's never done an uptown marketplace. And she currently runs a market in Oak Glen that has been extremely successful. I even go up there on the weekends and during apple season to be part of that event because it is such a successful event. Many of our chamber members can attest to the integrity of Miss Boiserank. So what we'd like to do is ask you to please let the free enterprise system go forward and approve.
For your comments, ma'am. So, before we do the vote again, I do want to kind of highlight that our youth advisory appointee, Luke, was very articulate and passionate in his presentation that there's not a lot of places for the youth of Yucaipa to go in Yucaipa to congregate, and this perhaps is a way we can address a concern that was brought to us by our newest youth advisory appointee. Also, it was required of the explorers of Yucaipa Sheriff Station to be present at market night, as was the volunteers for the Citizen Patrol. I would certainly feel even more comfortable just with extra eyes and ears with a radio on their side to broadcast to our deputies that there might be a problem afoot. So if city staff can work with our sheriff's department to see if there's a way they can schedule that to ensure that even volunteers would be huge in my mind at this event. Let's do the vote again. Is there a motion?
So I have a question. So does the County Line Market have a police presence? Because they sell alcohol there.
No, there's no police presence at County Line. There was no requirement.
But they are in fact selling alcohol, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So we currently have a market going on at the community center on Thursday and Saturday. I don't know if they sell it on Saturday. I've attended just about every one of them, and they're selling alcohol there without a police presence. And they're not having a problem there.
So I would like to note they do not sell alcohol on Saturdays. And upon tonight's decision, this application then goes to the police department, who reviews it and makes requirements for the applicant based on the details of the application, as well as discusses with staff, myself, the special event and the details of that event. The application goes to the city engineer and the public works manager to review the requirements of street closures. And then the application also goes to myself to review the requirements for my department, the Community Services Department. Those then requirements are placed in the application and sent over to the applicant to then decide if it's financially, if they're able to put on the event or not, and they want to proceed with a permit.
I move approval.
Motion by Councilman Duncan.
I'll second.
Seconded by our Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. All right. 25, Ryan Miller. Exclusive negotiated agreement.
Yes, Honorable Council, Honorable Mayor, great to see you guys. The mission is understood this evening. Be quick, but don't hurry. So I look forward to delivering on that as soon as it's ready. Let's do it. Okay, folks, so the item before you tonight is item number 25. This is an exclusive negotiating agreement. This is before you tonight because they are looking at city-owned property. So before we go to there, let's talk a little history of the property that's in discussion. If you take a look at the map here, the purple area is what's identified for the potential future restaurant of Toscano's Pizza and those breadsticks. Anybody ever had those breadsticks? Monstro's, you got some bread competition in town. That's for sure. So Toscano's and this property here, as just adjacent, of course, to our fire station. I did put a ladder truck there for a little foreshadowing potentially. And then, of course, our Dutch Brothers that's working now. And then to the north, you have the skate park and the 13th Street complex. On September 21st of 21, Resolution 2021-58, City Council passed that and declared the property as excess property. It's not usable for the city. So our intent there, having the location and proximity to Yucaipa Boulevard as commercial property to offer it to development. And as you see, Any property that's sold in the state of California as excess surplus property has to go through the Surplus Land Act. We did send notices of availability when we started the process, October 13th of 21, and that was, of course, in accordance with state law. We did not receive any responses from the developers that are on a specific list of multifamily housing developments from the state. The interest that we did receive, I'll go over shortly. And as you see here, what's represented on the property lines, you see that yellow kind of going from the southwestern portion of the property, if you will, and kind of heading up. So the city is currently working on the final trap map. You guys have actually approved that, and it's in the process with the county. So we're expecting the final track map that will identify the actual parcel, the subject here. Anytime with summer here, it's up to the diligence of the county to get that done. And then, of course, too, with this property, if we do enter into the ENA, an appraisal will be done on the property for the value as it is. And we'll go over that as well, too. And then, of course, one of the bonuses, benefits that I would say with city-owned property is you're able to put these under a development agreement, which kind of gives the framework and timing to put the project together. So it's not just put it through the process, get it approved. We actually have some say on what's getting built and how quickly it's getting done. So it's a very good thing for us. And moving to the next slide here, talking about a little more history for the property. It was listed for sale for the last 2 years. As I mentioned, we did not receive any notices on the NOA notice to the specific developers for the Surplus Land Act. However, we did receive 2 phone calls on the property and then 1 email from Toscano's, Victor Barbosa, the owner of Toscano's. So through my diligence of attempting to bring the property to the development hands that are out in the community and surrounding communities, I was met with many challenges with this property. One of them being the topography, being that it is kind of on a hill and a slope. I tried to best illustrate it here with this image from Google Earth. So that is one constraint, the building size hindrance for what is available. You have to pay a lot of money, move a lot of dirt to build a certain size use that you're looking for to make it profitable and stabilize for your business you're trying. So as the property sat, the ingress and egress challenges on Yucaipa Boulevard, you'd be a right in and a right out. So that also has some hindrance on what can be built there and how big. So commercial properties are rated on a system. At the best, this could probably be like a B-, and that brings issues. So the potential opportunities for development that could be brought to this property would be few and far between. But sometimes you have local business owners that have a dream and they have a site and something that they really want to go on. So for about the last 18 months, Victor Barbosa, the owner of Toscano's, and I have worked diligently to come up with a proposal of what potentially could happen with the property. I do want to remind you that the exclusive negotiating agreement is just a simple agreement that kind of takes the dream, the concepts, all of our communication, puts it on paper, gives it a timeline. There's no commitments to anything other than let's see if we can make this thing happen. There will be a disposition and development agreement that will be presented to you that will have the actual details of the final build out and all those types of timing mechanisms and what the city's responsible for, and then also the developer. And then, of course, this project will be submitted through our entitlement process, as every single process does, application does. So that will be going through the planning department to make sure that what they're measuring and presenting is available for the bodies to take a look at. So something I want to point out here, what did the city do? How could we get creative? How do we take this property from a B- and flip it into something positive where we're collecting, property tax and getting a value for that, getting a sales tax use in there where we're generating revenue? So the conversation had started where, what if we have another ingress and egress that could potentially be a future connectivity to our existing sports complex at 13th Street Park? I don't know if you've ever attained or entertained and been there when there's Little League going on, high school games, schools getting out, things like that. More connectivity for city services. The city could see the benefit there, so we saw an opportunity to keep moving forward. Now, something I want to point out on this bottom right picture, let's start here first. So the proposed restaurant is here, beautiful entry patio with a fountain. Now, this covered deck has been a dream of Victor's. So what's really nice, and you had to take me to the property to show me, is right here I put where the potential building could be. Now, when the sun sets in the summer, that's the sunset coming over right here. When it sets over the winter, it's over here. So no matter the time of day, sitting on that patio, drinking a nice refreshment, That's going to be a pretty good looking thing. So I think that was a real driving factor for Victor on this property, because we showed him multiple properties and we said, it's expensive to develop this one. He said, I want that view. So here we go. And now let's talk about the connectivity to that, what brought us to here today to kind of figure out that framework. The city is going to work with Victor and our departments to try to figure out what the most fiscal responsible way for both parties to have the connectivity to that park. It's all conceptual, so I just kind of put an area of where it potentially could be. And those specific attention will be paid, as it says, with practicing fiscal responsibility and exploring the various options. And then, of course, working hand in hand with the developer to make sure we have something there to benefit the community and help the project get to life. So I won't bore you, as my colleague Corey did earlier, with highlighting things. I said with highlighting things, so I highlighted it for you in this presentation. So if the ENA is approved, the yellow are the big milestones that would be coming up next. So within 6 months, the city tasks that I'll be blessed with will be appraising the subject property, finding out what that fair market value is, completing the Surplus Land Act process with the state of California, and then, of course, we'll draft the disposition and development agreement. Within 9 months, we keep moving forward. The applicant has to submit for the entitlement process, and all the information through that submittal and plan checks, I'll be able to fill in the rest of the framework for the disposition and development agreement. And then within 12 months, with the entitlement and the development agreement, we'll come back to City Council for your approval. So this is just one of the steps to get to a potential approval of a project. So the recommendation before you is that City Council authorize the city manager to approve the exclusive negotiating agreement with Toscano's. I know if you saw his business entity name, you were in the staff report, you're probably like, what the heck? That's just a DBA. He's still gonna do breadsticks here. To negotiate a potential purchase of the city-owned property at 32660 Yucaipa Boulevard and authorize the city manager to make any necessary non-substantive changes to the ENA and execute all described requirements. So if approved tonight, staff will return to City Council at a future meeting, present the project that was submitted for entitlement along with the development agreement, which will encompass the purchase and sale agreement for the property. And that'll be for your review and consideration by City Council. I believe Victor Barbosa is here tonight in the back. Victor, I don't know if you are encouraged or feel like saying a few words. You're more than welcome to. Awesome. So as Victor's coming up, one thing I will tell you about him is there are very few businesses that give back to the youth in the community. And when it comes to the parties and little leagues and things like that, Victor's one of the best that we have. So Victor?
City Council, Mr. Mayor, thank you guys for having me. Mr. Duncan, you come down all the time. I know a lot of you have been there. We're outgrowing that building. And now that we got the bar and the full liquor license, what my dream is to do is have a 2-story building. So the downstairs, like we originally had Toscano's, where we have families, you know, little leagues, team parties, things like that. Upstairs, full bar, full service, and expand our menu a little bit. I want to keep it like the young man that was here. You know, keep Yucaipa cool, keep things going, and actually having Redlands people come to us instead of us always having to go to them. So that's my dream. You know, that's what I want to do. And unfortunately, I only have 3 years in my current lease to do it. Otherwise, I have to go. So we've been working for a long time trying to get this happen. Hopefully we can make it happen, and appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Concludes my presentation. We are here for compliments and questions.
How many parking spaces are at your current location, Victor?
I'd probably say close to between 30, roughly around 35 years in.
Okay. All right. Any other questions of staff?
Mr. Miller, that was an incredible presentation. Thank you very much. I move approval.
I'll second.
You killing me. Just looking for the compliments. All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Mr. White, let's move on to the fiscal year 25 proposed budget summary. Hey, Ryan, do you feel like you can do the budget too? No? Okay. I'll compliment you if you can do that one.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Item 26 is significantly less exciting. This is the fiscal 25 proposed budget. And they're going to switch the monitors over to the laptop in a moment. Before we do, the budget is the spending plan, the annual spending plan for the city. And so what that means is we accumulate costs based on the estimated cost of what it's going to take to deliver the services at the levels of the plan. And then we combine that with the available estimated revenues. And ultimately, we come up with a calculation to say, does it cost more or less to deliver services at that level? And
Is this your first?
all right, so this is a brief overview of the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. This presentation provides a summary of the methodology used for accumulating the balances. What we're going to ask City Council for is to review the information and provide direction. The adopted budget is on the calendar for June 10th. And so we'll take this information, combine that with the directives that you have for us tonight, and come back to you on June 10th for the final adoption of the fiscal 25 budget. So it's important to think through the spending plan as we've heard members of the public say, how do you spend money? What is it that you spend on? And so when I heard that, I thought of the Bobs, and I was thinking of them saying, what exactly do you do here? And we do three things. We provide protection, public protection, we provide development services, and we provide community services. There's a fourth spending category that we have, we call it general government, but that's really just a support level of services that's there, that exists to support the service lines that we have. So our service lines can be considered kind of pillars of service for our community, starting with public safety. And this is a photo of Deputy Juarez, and starting with the police. So as we build up police, we also have fire. We contract the police services with the county, San Bernardino County. For fire, we contract with CAL FIRE. And the third component of our public safety pillar is paramedic services, also contracted with CAL FIRE. It's important to note that the paramedic service does have a dedicated funding stream. We'll get more into that in just a moment. And similarly, the fire protection services also has a dedicated funding stream. Police services does not have a dedicated funding stream, and coincidentally is the most expensive of the three public safety components. The second pillar of services is development services. This includes everything from public works, engineering, planning, economic development, code enforcement, building and safety, which is contracted with Charles Abbott. And that is not our planning department building. That is a poorly functioning planning department building that I thought was hilarious, so I included it here. And then our third pillar is our pillar of community services. And so community services does a whole lot of things: youth recreation programs, senior services, aquatics, special events, YPAC, and more. And so that's our third component. The fourth component that I mentioned that was support or general government, that consists of the city council office, the city manager's office, the city attorney, finance, human resources, risk management, the city clerk, information technology, and governmental affairs all roll up into what we call general government or support. The purpose, again, of those supporting services is to support these three main service lines. So we are at a financial crossroads as it relates to the services that we provide. It's no surprise that we are in a deficit budget position. And while that's okay for us right now, it's not sustainable to operate into perpetuity at a deficit position. So we are almost at the time to choose what our strategy is going to be to come out of that budget deficit position. We have three options. One is to plow straight ahead, and that is basically not changing anything as far as our service lines or levels, and not coming up with the funding to fund those endeavors. The second one is to veer left. That is, it's great financially. It kind of solves the budget problem, but on the service side, it has a significant cut in service levels and a lot of unhappy constituents because the funding levels that people have grown accustomed to are not what would be in place if we were to veer left. And the third, which is the preferred option, is to veer right, which is a combination of modifying service levels and the way that we deliver those services, and ultimately finding new revenues to fund those things as we move forward. We'll come back to that slide in a moment. But before we do, I wanted to come back to this. You've seen this slide a couple of different times, but this is a 20-year history of our fund balance, our fund equity, cumulative fund equity. And the usefulness of this slide is limited, but it's very useful in considering the trend information and looking at the historical strategy and recognizing that now is a great time to pivot and perhaps adopt a new strategy moving forward. But what this shows is back in 2003, our existing reserve balances back then, we were ramping up for 3 or 4 years after that, 5 years after that, and then a steady slide down all the way into COVID. In COVID, in the year of COVID, we had ARPA money coming in. We also had a significant capital reimbursement, so it kind of spikes up. But it's artificial in the sense of the ARPA money is not recurring. It's a one-time deal, and that reimbursement was also a one-time deal. So that as in the box there, as we're tipping over the edge, coming back down, we're keeping with the trend of that historical slide down. What's important to remember with this context is that slide down, there was strategy involved, and most of that spending was related to in our development service area. It's capital spending. We're building things, and those things are expensive. But there was a strategy, and that strategy was build it, and it will ultimately pay off through increased property values, increased sales tax opportunities, other types of revenues, transient occupancy tax with hotels, things like that. And so there was a strategy in the spending, but we were sliding down. We were spending more than we were bringing in. The other thing that I wanted to point out on this is that rectangle over on the right. In 24, that is estimated actuals, is that number, where everything to the left of that is based on actual reported balances. And then the fiscal 25 number, that steep slide down, is based on budget estimates. And that steep slide also includes multi-year budget capital carryover that's rolling over from one year to the next. So it's artificially really steep down. It's important to remember as you look at that we are not falling off a cliff at the moment. We included in those budget estimates are capital carryover, about $28 million of capital carryover. The one thing that this is not predicting a doomsday scenario to say, hey, if we don't do anything, we're going to be bankrupt tomorrow. That's not the usefulness of this slide. It's just saying the trend, the historical strategy was to spend on capital. As we trend down towards zero, at some point there will be a time of pivot, a time to pivot, and I am suggesting that time is coming up soon, really soon. All right, so jumping into the public safety service line in our financial strategy, policing has always been a priority in Yucaipa. We do not have a dedicated funding stream. It's an expensive operation, and we're always at the cutting edge on the police side. I believe a wise man once said, the blanket of safety that we comfortably sleep under is expensive, if I got that correct.
Very, very wise.
Also included in this is fire protection. We do have a funding stream that's a 35% of all property tax that comes in is sliced off to fund fire protection services. While the dedicated funding stream is great, that funding stream generates roughly $5 million in fiscal year 25, and our estimate of fire protection costs is $6 million. So we've got more costs, and those costs are growing at a quicker clip than our revenue is growing as well. So we've got a dedicated funding stream, but it's not sufficient to sustain, and we're diverging on the cost increases versus the revenue increases. And finally, our paramedic also has a dedicated funding stream. That's the parcel tax. And you guys know about that parcel tax. It's non-increasing. It doesn't have an escalator in it. So it generates about $1 million each year. Our cost to provide paramedic in fiscal 25 is a little bit over $2 million. And so we have the same problem there where we're diverging. And it's our public safety service line, as currently constructed, is non-sustainable. And we're trying to fix that. For the short term, for fiscal 25, our methodology for putting together the numbers was to hold service levels intact. Don't cut services, hold them intact, give us time to come up with a longer term funding scenario. But in the meantime, hold service levels where they are. That ended up a projected cost of close to $24 million. We have projected revenue of $6 million, and so the net cost is $18 million on the public safety side. To make this as transparent and clear as possible as to the cost of public safety, we've changed our financial reporting model, and we've taken all of those costs and grouped them into one fund, a public safety fund. So as we get into the budget itself, you'll see a new fund that pops up, public safety fund. That's all public safety wrapped up into one, so we can clearly see how much it costs to deliver that service. Our financial strategy with development services is a little bit different, and this is a fantastic movie, but it's if you build it, they will come. And from our development services standpoint, if you build now, if you invest in infrastructure for the city of Yucaipa, revenues will follow. And that revenue, again, would be increased property values, means more property tax. We have a La Quinta Hotel that was unable to be built a few years ago, but now that we have the drainage in place, now we can build a hotel. And that generates TOT, transient occupancy tax, to the city. We have increased opportunities for sales tax. So the strategy historically was to build, and the revenue will come. Where we are right now, the revenue that we are recognizing is not sufficient to fund the increased level of operations that are necessary, and the funds that the accounting funds that were used to build that infrastructure are still in a deficit position. We've talked about the DIF funds. Those DIF funds are still in a deficit position. And so now would be an opportune time to pivot from the historical strategy into a new one. And with that strategy, in the fiscal year 25 proposed budget, what we've done is we've prioritized the capital that's in the queue, the authorizations that City Council has already made. We've gone through that list and said, these are the things, these are the projects that can go forward. These are the ones that we can wait on. So we're kind of controlling the spending. We're deferring non-prioritized capital. So in order to make it onto the list and for us to come to you with a request, it's got to reach a level of prioritization. We're also using restricted funding first on street improvements, road repairs. We're prioritizing the use of restricted funding. And then we're also implementing a full cost recovery model related to permitting and fees. And finally, we get to our community services financial strategy. This is all the things that the team does. They're very, very busy. They've got aquatics camps, community center, crossing guards, Five Winds Ranch, the park, not festival, senior services, special events, the festival, sports, youth sports, the STARS program, the after-school program, teen programs, and the YPAC. They've got a lot going on. The strategy there, taken there for the fiscal year 25 proposed budget, again, was to hold service levels where they are, let them do all the things that they're doing, but also have them revisit the way that they're delivering those and really focus on a cost recovery model to recoup as much of the cost of delivering those services as we can. In that regard, the budget includes approximately $8 million of cost for community services and related revenues of $6 million. So the net cost is just under $2 million. So we're in the high 70s as far as the cost recovery. So when we come back to the getting closer to choosing our path forward, again, we're saying the veer right model is the one that we want to pursue. Basically, kick the can one more time on the budget, go in with the deficit. That deficit for public safety and general fund is about $7 million. But veer right, hold services steady, and allow staff the time to work with the community on coming up with a long-term funding fix as we move forward. And that's the way that we've built the proposed budget. A couple of key results, projected inflows. This is just for general fund and public safety fund, but our projected inflows are $41.5 million. Our projected outflows are $48.9 million. You do the math, and that projected budgetary deficit is $7.3 million in the budget. We'll get into the detail in just a moment. But with those inflows, we've got annual property tax of a little over $15 million. About $5 million of that is related to fire. We've got intergovernmental revenue of 7.2, sales tax revenue of 5.6, and charges for services of 7.5. Again, a reminder, ARPA is no longer a funding source. We're losing between $2 and $3 million a year because we've used it all up and it doesn't come back. So that was a hit on our revenue projections, as well as it no longer exists. And then from an outflow, our key outflows in the general fund and public safety are public safety contracts and non-contracts, which is $23.5 million. And then our payroll costs are a little over $12 million in the general fund and the public safety fund. In summary, this year we do have a digital budget book. We have a web-based budget that's coming your way. We do also have a proposed budget book that's also digital, and we're going to look at that in just a minute. But that budget book does include one-year costs primarily. It also includes the CIP, which is multi-year and rolling forward. So all those numbers that we're about to look at, keep that in mind. Ultimately, we are looking for your review and direction tonight, and we're coming back to you on June 10th with a final deliverable. All right, the URL for this proposed budget book was included in the staff report, and so some people may have already seen this, but I did want to walk you through it. This is the way that our budget book is digital beginning this year. One of the things with the big push for added transparency is to make the budget, which normally is a 200-page document and is a tough read as you flip pages. Now it's digital. You can zoom in on exactly what you want to see whenever you want it at your fingertips. So this is the look of it. This is the proposed. We'll have a different look with some added information for the final on June 10th. But you can kind of hover over here. It will have a bunch of drop downs. A couple things that I did want to highlight is the handsome gentleman sitting up on the dais. You got your own page there, City Council. As we go through this, one thing to focus in on is the organizational chart. This is the way that we are structured. And so this, did we say this was teal? Color are the different departments and at the director level, and then all the divisions that are overseen by those different departments. I did want to highlight a couple changes in the fund structure. The green color represents significant changes in funds. Our general fund, our information technology fund, and our development impact fees special revenue fund all had changes. Further down the page, our public safety fund also has a significant change. It's brand new. And then over in the capital projects, our general capital projects fund is also new. The yellow highlights funds that are going away. We're getting rid of those funds over the course of time. Things like the fire fund still has a balance in it, so that's going to continue on until there is no more balance. But from now on, we're accounting for all the costs of fire in our public safety fund. So moving over to the budget overview page, we started with council goals. Council had these goals that were provided. That was the basis for putting together these numbers. When you look at understanding the city budget, we go through what the annual spending plan is, all of our different spending buckets from an operating standpoint. And then on the capital side, we also have buckets, and those are more construction in nature. For those construction guys out there, a little construction humor. But that kind of goes through how we spend. Our budget strategy, as we go through this page, walks you through, and we try to make it very easily readable and give you an overview of how this budget was put together as far as the methodology and how the city conducts business, what are our priorities to the city. So these are the services provided. This wheel provides the net cost of our service lines. 63% of our net cost goes to public safety, 22%, and these are fiscal year 25 budget numbers, 22% goes to the development services line, 7% of the net cost goes to community services because of their ability to recover costs. And then 9% is the net cost of the general government or supporting services. In general, I would say in practice, 20% is the target on the general government side, and 50% is pretty high on the public safety side. In general, not for Yucaipa, just in general, Yucaipa tends to be high on the public safety side and low on the support side historically. Here is the graph that we talked about earlier. It's also included in the budget book. Again, that's not a doomsday scenario, but further down the page in status of the budget deficit, this does provide. This first chart is the straight ahead option, which was not sustainable. You can see that if we were to do nothing and continue on, we would be out of money pretty quick. The second, this is the cut to service levels. And so while this works financially, the services that we provide would be significantly impacted, not the preferred course. And ultimately, this is the preferred course. And you can tell it is because it's the biggest picture. And this basically shows the green line of revenues increasing, the red line of expenditures increasing at a slower rate, and fund balance being replenished. All of these are projected out, with 25 being the budget year. 25 back is the same on all of them. The change in course is on the out years. As we go through this process, we never get to the finish line on financial stability. We're always tweaking. We're always trying to be better. And these paragraphs just allude to that. Getting into the fund information, this is good stuff here. The all fund summary. A couple more pages that I want to highlight and we'll wrap up. But this page, this is an all funds. All of these graphs are really handy. You can see as much detail as you want, but at the very bottom of this page is this all fund summary, and this has the starting estimated equity, but the really good stuff is these proposed revenues and expenditures, transfers in, transfers out. I talked about the multi-year capital carryover. That's also identified in this all funds. And so in this all funds, you can see that we've got $28 million rolling forward in capital. The revenues coming in, expenditures going out, and transfers between funds get us to a projected estimated equity. Those estimated equity numbers are there for analysis purposes only, subject to change. And then our net estimated change in fund balance way over on the right. Every fund has its own information. This is the general fund. As you go through it, you can see revenues, you can see expenditures. You also have these spreadsheet breakdowns. When you expand those, it'll have all the information, historical, going back to 22 actuals as well. And as we move over, so every fund has its own on that fund summaries tab. General fund departments has its own, and since community services is right here, we'll pick on them. But each department has its own landing page where you can learn about the director and what the department does. It has an organizational chart at the department level, and then it'll get into the expenditures and revenues by that department. Included underneath, if you expand that caret, so it's closed, but when you expand it, you'll have each division. So if you wanted to know about aquatics, you will see who's responsible for the aquatics division and expenditures and revenues by each division as well. These, as you hover, you'll get additional information. The wheels are also hoverable. You can get additional information, and again, spreadsheet breakdowns down to the division level where you can get historical information. So if you wanted to know what do we spend on salaries in aquatics, the information is there. Okay, last thing. Over on this capital, this is our capital improvement program. And here you can click on the attachment and it will open up. Oh, it's not going to do it. I shouldn't have done it. What was I thinking? Okay, let's do it that a different way. When we go to the capital projects funds on the all funds summary and we pick out, let's see, what's a good one? Development impact fees, capital funds. We have our fund level information, historical, our revenues, our expenditures by fund, and then at the bottom of this page, we'll have our detail, and then we'll have these sheets that show all of the projects that are included in that capital projects fund. So all the project, this one is Wilson Creek. It'll have the life-to-date estimated expenditures, the authorizations that have already been authorized, the new requests, or sorry, the remaining budget, and then the new requests. Way over on the right is this TBD column, or future requests that have not come your way yet, but just to give you a heads up that there are additional spending. A lot of these projects are phased, and what we did this year is include all remaining estimated spending regardless of phase. And so that information is also there so that you have a clear picture of what's remaining. When we talk about phase 1D, the question might be, how many phases are there? And this page would show this is all the estimated spending until the project is complete. That wraps up what I wanted to show, and I'd be happy to field questions on the proposed budget, the methodology. We're available for questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. City Manager.
Let me maybe try to kind of very simply summarize here. So all the departments and the staff, we've been going through this budgeting process for several months now. And at the beginning of the process, each department goes through and our direction to the departments was, look, we're running a deficit. We know we're deficit spending right now, and we're working on a long-term fix. So propose what you think you need to operate optimally. But be careful, don't go overboard. Just propose what you think you need to operate effectively. And then the department submitted all that information to the finance department. The finance department put it all together. And the number that resulted from combining all of that was pretty scary. It came back as a deficit of about $15 million. Right? And so we went through meetings with every department. We went through rounds of seeing where we could cut. And in meeting with every department and going through the requests, one of the concerning things for me was that there wasn't really a lot of fluff, right? These weren't kind of pie in the sky wish list items for the most part. And so, you know, a lot of the things that we've had to cut to get from $15 million down to, you know, $7.3 million, these are things really we should be doing, but that we're going to have to delay. You know, a lot of deferred maintenance, for example, right? So we're at a point now where we're able to get the draft budget down to a deficit of $7.3 million. Knowing that really, and maybe ideally, there would have still been some room to cut from the 15 million. So let's just say, really, if we were doing everything we really should do, we'd probably be at a deficit of about 13 million or so, right? So that's a scary place to be. So what you're seeing here is a budget that, as much as we can, keeps the deficit in a controllable spot for us right now, knowing that we've got to solve the long-term problem. We've been working really hard on the ways that can be done. We're going to be having a special meeting at the YPAC. It'll be a city council meeting, but also a community meeting. And there'll be a portion of that meeting that'll be a little bit more town hall style, so that there'll be an opportunity for discussion with the audience, where we will go through in depth kind of where we are, how we got here, and what potential pieces of the puzzle there are to solve the budget problem. Any day now, I think we're launching an online tool where residents will be able to go in and kind of tinker and say, okay, well, you know, we've got to bridge this gap. You know, you can take things out of the budget, you can add revenue sources into the budget, but the game is you got to balance the budget, right? And so we're going to try to really engage the public as much as we can, but we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And at the end of the day, the community is going to have to decide if we want to continue providing the level of services that we have today. We have to increase revenue. If we don't want to increase revenue, then we have to reduce level of service. There's really no way around that. Now, that can look any number of different ways, and we're going to present that to the community. And the budget we bring you next month in June for adoption will include kind of a companion resolution that says, okay, if we don't bring in more revenue, what do service levels look like? And we'll talk a lot more about that next month as we bring the budget back to you and as we have the community meeting. But in a nutshell, this budget that we're bringing to you for next fiscal year kind of maintains the status quo as much as we can in terms of service levels. There are no reduction in public safety service levels, for example. Knowing that we're still not providing level of service really we would like to be across the board, but kind of maintaining the status quo for one more fiscal year while we work on implementing the long-term solution, which we're going to be talking a lot about over the next couple months. So I think that's, as best I can, a summary of where we are. One of the exciting things is kind of this higher level of transparency. It's a lot of detail, but for people who are so inclined, they will be able to go on the website and look at every aspect of our budget and play with it and tinker with it. And so that's a neat technology we're able to bring to bear here. But we've got a lot of discussions yet to be had and a lot of tough choices.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. White. Questions of staff? Is there a motion to approve items 1 through 3 on item number 26?
I'll move.
The request was for review and direction, but no action.
So when you say direction, you're talking about, stay the course, veer left, veer right.
Preferably veer right, so we don't have to redo everything that we've already done. But to the extent of, I think the city manager summarized it perfectly. Based on the methodology that we used, the best we could do was a $7.3 million deficit budget in general fund and public safety. That's in recognition of there are costs that are being deferred, kicked out, that are going to come due at some time. So the level of our issue is not 7.3, it's something much higher than that. But the direction would be either concurrency with the methodology used, preferably, or the other side would be go back to the drawing board and do something else.
So you're looking for a direction on veer right.
Well, and let me clarify too. So this is the first time we're officially bringing you the draft of the budget. We will bring it back to you for adoption next month. And so at this point, we don't really need any action. By direction, we mean if there's anything in the budget, or anything in the strategy we've explained that you don't like, you'd like us to approach it a different way, take a stab at something different than what you're seeing today. Now would be a good time to let us know so that when we bring it back to you next month, we can incorporate any of that feedback. But otherwise, there's really no action we're asking for tonight.
The only thing I would just ask that you just keep in mind as this plan to, if you build it, they will come. They're not going to come to a city that's not safe. We've seen it. As local as San Bernardino, you can put all the economic development you want to with a nice, cool transit system that's supposed to bring people in and out. Nobody wants to go to San Bernardino. And if we start neglecting public safety in the city of Yucaipa, we can pass all the resolutions to support the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act we want to. There's still crime in the state of California because the ridiculous leadership that we have in Sacramento. We neglect public safety in Yucaipa and people feel unsafe here. You can have 10 of Ryan Miller's, who's a rock star, bringing economic development in our city, but nobody's going to come here to spend it. Nobody's going to want to bring their employees and their insurance premiums here to go up when their businesses are vandalized or broken into on a nightly basis. So I urge you that while I understand we have a deficit issue, if we start trying to find a way to cut public safety in any way, we're already, let's just be clear, we've made strides in the last 4 years that we haven't seen in 30 years before that, by putting public safety in the forefront of every decision we have. We were neglecting our law enforcement for 3 decades, not staffing them appropriately. Yucaipa was the retirement station of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. I know that because I worked there. This is where people came to do nothing. And if we finally have a police department where deputies are begging to come here and work, to actually do police work, because we have become the city that has a council that supports public safety. So whatever you guys do, I'm not, Phil, I couldn't do your job. I would rather run into an active shooter than have to look and get excited like you did about a budget. You said, this is cool stuff. And I looked up and I'm like, what are you talking about? This is numbers on a spreadsheet. That's not cool stuff. So my hat's off to you, because we need directors of finance to get excited about budgets. It scares the bejesus out of me that you're seeing deficit. Last year, we were told a number which is substantially smaller than $7.3 million in deficit. I thought it grew to $7 million because of Hurricane Hillary vandalizing our water flood control channel. I didn't realize it was a recurring deficit. I thought once we see the returns from, hopefully the state of emergency that we keep on carrying over, and FEMA and the feds giving us money to reimburse us for this millions of dollars of damage, that it would go back down to like a $2 million, not a manageable deficit either, but $7 million is substantially higher than I thought it was going to be. So we've seen over the last 4 years the catastrophic results of defund the police nationwide. Everybody's now going back as fast as they can in the opposite direction, with dangerous effects by quickly hiring unqualified individuals. Enter stage left, the Memphis 5 criminals who put on a badge and called themselves police officers. They had no business being cops. They weren't trained. They were just
backfilling spots because Memphis City Council had a brain bleed for a minute and decided we should defund our police. And then they went back the other way as fast as they could. So, bad things can happen from my seat, my 15 years in law enforcement. I hope I'm speaking for him as and our police chief as well, that we can't neglect public safety, because if we do, all the work Ryan does and you, Mr. City Manager, trying to build our infrastructure to bring in some revenue will all be for naught, because nobody wants to come to an unsafe city.
No, that's true. And this city values public safety probably more than any I've ever seen, and supports our first responders in a fantastic way. And this council certainly showed, since my time here, that is this city's number one priority. We've made great strides with the SOP team, with our saturation operations. Homelessness-related crime are down throughout the city. We're making tremendous strides there. So we're definitely committed to public safety. We're not recommending any cuts to public safety in this upcoming fiscal year budget. However, when we're talking about the long-term fix, as I mentioned before, really the community is going to have a decision to make about providing additional revenue or reducing services. And unfortunately, if that decision is reduce service levels, there's no way to balance the budget without cuts to public safety. It is the biggest thing we spend money on in the city. It's by far the largest portion of our budget. There's no way to get it done otherwise. So, we're not proposing any cuts in fiscal year 24-25. Hopefully, we'll never have to propose cuts to public safety. The good news in all of this is that there is a way out, and we've identified various pieces to the puzzle that can provide a way out for us, and we'll start having those conversations publicly in the next couple of months, so that the community can make a decision.
I make a motion that we veer right for not only the city council, but also the successor agency and the housing authority.
I had one question on the fire department. We were talking at one point that we were going to try to bill insurance companies for.
Yes, we are. We are pursuing that.
Okay.
We are, I believe, a couple weeks away from. Yeah, the battalion chief gave me an update 2 weeks ago, saying that we were 2 weeks away, and so I believe that if it's not happening this week, we're starting that pursuit. We've gone through all of the legwork on ramping that up. We've never done it in the past, and so we were kind of trailblazing in that regard. But we've done all that legwork, and we have a vendor helping us in that lift on board as well, and so that billing should be imminent. Yeah.
And we talked one other thing about when construction companies come in here, providing their own our fee for them to work here. I think that we were talking about that, weren't we? About having them have a fee to where if they were to get hurt in our city and stuff, it would pay. Gosh, I can't remember. It's been a long time.
Isn't that your workman's comp?
Yeah, it's workman's comp, but I mean, it pays for the if they were to use our fire department to come and help them out.
So that might be the EMS billing and/or EMS subscription that we talked about, where, whether you're a resident here, if you're not a resident here, then subscription wouldn't be an option. So if you got injured here, called 911, city fire engine responded with a paramedic on it, you received EMS service from that paramedic, you would then later receive an invoice for that service, fee for service. And that's more or less was the direction of the council, but the direction was what's called compassionate billing, which means, we at this point would not be invoicing directly the patient. We would be invoicing the insurance companies. And so we would only get paid by the insurance companies that cover those services. We're estimating that will cover somewhere around 30% or so of those expenses.
There's a motion on the table by Councilman Duncan. We just had a second by Mayor Pro Tem Venable. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Landon Kern, let's talk about our roads.
I am happy to transition us to speaking about our road and transportation network. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This report before you is for the draft pavement management program for fiscal year 24-25, which essentially authorizes the funding available to us to be spent on street maintenance, the repaving and rehabilitation of our streets. We do this each year as a part of our annual budget development, and in 2023 represented the end of a 5-year cycle, and so we went through that recalibration, that testing of all of our streets, and that was completed. And this report will provide a little history on that, as well as what our plan is to move forward. You can see our first PMP was developed in 1998. Go through that annual process, and once again, that 2023 testing was completed. My clicker's not working here. There we go. Great. Thank you. So revisiting, we've heard about some of our council goals, public safety, of course, being a top priority. In 2023, our city council goal number 3 was to take a more inclusive and aggressive approach to road maintenance. And so we took that to heart, and what you'll see this evening as a part of our presentation is us walking through and implementing that goal in a way with our pavement management program and our testing to get more involvement with the city council as well as the public through that process. So just a couple highlights as we move through that. With the testing that was completed in 2023, end of last year, we held an informational workshop here for the public and the city council on January 22nd, where we walked through the results of that 2023 recalibration and talked a lot about the PCI, which we'll touch on here in a moment. Following that, we had a city council field trip and a public workshop where we went out in the field. It was happened to be a rainy day, so we got to see how our streets handled the weather, and that was conducted on February 5th. And then finally here, we just launched last week with the help of our city manager's office, a new webpage that features a lot of information. What is our pavement management plan? What goes into it? We get a lot of conversations, a lot of phone calls here at City Hall. We always have on our streets and how we maintain them. This is another great place for people to go and learn more about our PMP, what goes into that. And we'll be continuing to update that as we move forward. Just a quick recap on that citywide testing and the analysis that came with that. There are several different factors that go into ultimately giving us a report that rates and scales all of our streets on a scale, and we use what's the industry standard, that pavement condition index. So all the different features and conditions of the street go into calculating a score for each of our streets that are on that range from 0 to 100, 0 of course being the worst, 100 being a brand new street that's constructed. And one of the things that's handy about this scale is it allows us to identify, of course, where our streets fall in these categories, but also to identify what maintenance, treatment, or repaving treatment is appropriate for each street, depending on what category that they're in. As we covered earlier this year in January, we went through the 2023 results, and they concluded that the Yucaipa average PCI is about 58, just below that 60 to 65 national average. And so taking that city council goal, number 3, an aggressive approach and really maximizing our funding to implement the street rehab will help us to increase our PCI to that national average and trend in that direction. Here again, we see that range again kind of displayed a little bit differently. On the left, you see the 0 to 100 range and those different categories, the conditions kind of with those simple terms. And then finally on the right, we have our treatment methods or rehabilitation methods. At the top of the scale there for newer streets, there's no treatment or maintenance needed. And of course, the further you move down on that PCI scale, you notice the maintenance required to bring those streets back into a good condition is a lot more extensive. There's more scope of work, and of course, the costs significantly go up as you move down that treatment scale there. So with this next 5-year cycle that we're entering into, the repaving treatments that we're recommending are described in a little more detail in the report. We've got our microsurface category, which for streets that are in the 60 to 70 range that are just kind of getting to that point where if we don't maintain them, they'll degrade further. And that microsurface treatment is a surface treatment where we go in advance, we do crack sealing and patching as needed, and then we apply a surface level treatment to those streets with the microsurface product, and that extends the lifespan of those streets with a minimal cost impact at that point. We have then, of course, a mill and overlay where we remove or use grinding equipment to remove a thin layer of the existing asphalt, after which a new layer of asphalt is applied on top of that existing street. This can be done in a variety of different ways. They're described a little more detail in the report, but depending on the condition of the street, we can do a little less invasive grind and overlay by removing portions of the outer edges of the street, and in some cases where we really need to go and grind the entire street and apply a new paving surface to that. Finally, we have the full removal and rehabilitation. So for those streets that are below that PCI of 40, what we have seen really work well in Yucaipa is to remove and pulverize an existing section of pavement in place, and that's used as a new base layer, then compacted, and a new 3 or 4 inch thick layer of asphalt is installed on that new base material, resulting in a newly paved street. Again, for streets that require full rehabilitation if they have that PCI below 40. And then, of course, we have the approximate cost for each of those treatment methods there on the screen here before you. One of the other things that goes in, there's several different factors that go into the prioritization. You know, we talked a lot earlier this year and at the workshop about how the PCI and the test results really drive that scientific-driven prioritization. So you'll see that does influence how we manage which streets to repave next. We were able to really incorporate some feedback throughout the year as we've heard from the public and also through our public workshops and field trips. And then, of course, other factors including CIP projects that are coming up or underway, as well as some other work being performed by other agencies, utility work that may impact the timing of a rehabilitation project. Here we have a few maps to just kind of highlight kind of the real high-level streets. This first map here is for the segments that have been approved for construction and rehabilitation here with the current fiscal year. So one of the nice things about these exhibits, it kind of shows that not only are the streets prioritized just based on their condition, but also we do try to geographically spread that maintenance so that each annual project really captures a broad range throughout the city for rehabilitation. The next the next image you see here is for the proposed streets that are prioritized for fiscal year 24-25. It's important to note this is a draft list for the next, the first of the 5-year cycle that we're entering into. And this draft list of locations will be incorporated into its final form with the adoption of the annual budget as we have done in the past. And so once again, this is the first year that we're going to be entering into in this next 5-year cycle. And then finally, we show the projection out to the second, third, and fourth, and fifth years of the cycle in green there. So you can kind of see the geographic spread of the treatments and maintenance that we'll be planning over the next 5 years. And of course, each year we get the opportunity to come back to council and enter into this process again where we can prioritize and have council approve each annual P&P program as a part of the budget process. With that, I'll hand it off to our director, Fermin Preciado, to close out the presentation for us.
Thank you, Landon. And just to summarize real quickly, there are 4 funding sources that are being proposed for next year's P&P. As you can see on the screen, all 4 funding sources are restricted funds or funds that can only be used for street-related work, for maintenance and improve our infrastructure, our street infrastructure. There are no general fund or unrestricted funding that is being proposed. And on this next slide, you'll see the recommendations before you for this item. If approved, this will allow staff to finalize those maps for the pavement maintenance for next year and the next 5 years, and that will be included in the final budget document for your consideration next month. That concludes our report. Thank you.
So I'm going to be a little facetious for a second, and exaggerate just to make a point. There's been a push on the social web to repave Yucaipa, is what hashtag I saw, because patching apparently is just a bad idea. You get a scratch on the side of your car, you should repaint the whole car, not just mend the scratch. Apparently is the mantra of most of our constituents. So I'm not good at math, but if you want to check my numbers, I think I did this correctly. You said $3.17 a square foot for a full rehab, or yeah, there he is. Full removal and rehab, $3.17 a square foot. The Google machine says there's 27,874,400 square feet in a mile of roadway. We have about 244 miles of public roadway that we're responsible to maintain in Yucaipa. That's 6,802,329,600 square feet. At $3.17 a square foot, that's 21,563,384,832. So this 4.1 million is not going to cut it. You're going to need to come up with 21 billion to do that. According to people on the social web, we are failing to maintain our roads, and we need $21 billion to do that. So, Phil, get back to your calculator machine and find $21 billion worth of money for us to use so we can hashtag repave Yucaipa.
Is this the most we've ever budgeted for 1 year? Is $4 million, 4.1?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, is that because we fell below, or, because I don't remember seeing this high before. I think it was like 2.4, 2.6, right? I mean, that's kind of the.
I think 2.8, maybe just under 3 million is probably the highest, but as we were reviewing the various funds, and more specifically the restricted funds, there is a balance in the Measure I and also the gas tax fund. So with our aggressive approach, we're proposing to use those funds for the purpose that they're intended to be used for.
So going back to the anecdotal part, I did get approached by a constituent who asked if we, was like, you need to do something about our roads. They're out of control. And I asked the question, well, how much, you're a taxpayer, how much should we spend of your dollars on roads in Yucaipa, just overall? And the answer was at least $100,000 a year to road maintenance. Mm-hmm. And they were shocked to learn that we were spending almost $5 million on road maintenance. So I think the information we need to put out there is that the cost of maintaining roads is expensive, and we're putting a lot of money towards it. I mean, substantially more than $100,000 as per one person thought we should be spending. So I was being facetious with the $21 billion, but we have a lot of roads in Yucaipa, and I would venture to say we have probably more roads, public roads in Yucaipa than our neighbors to the south, and I know a lot of, even some communities have HOAs that maintain their roadways, but we do have a lot of roads in Yucaipa that we are responsible for. And that field trip was evident that we have even a lot of roads that are old county roads left over that have not been touched by this city of Yucaipa and paved the way that we pave it here. So thank you for the report. It is important. It's one of probably the most glaring parts of right after public safety. People don't like getting flat tires and their struts damaged by jacked up roads. So thank you for the report. Is there a motion regarding item 27?
Approval.
Motion by Councilman Duncan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Thorpe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Which takes us to our final agendized item. This is item number 28. It's a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing of item number 28. The time is 9:11 hours, or 9:11 p.m. Sorry. This is going to be presented by Ben. Ben, let's hear it.
All right, I'll be very quick on this. Thank you all, Mayor and City Council members. As you guys are aware, the city's development impact fee program is designed to essentially have future development pay their fair share of infrastructure upgrades to the city. So as new development occurs, they provide money that offsets the infrastructure needed to help facilitate that overall growth, and it kind of divides up that cost as a kind of fair share element. As part of any other condition of approval for projects, what cities are allowed to levy on the development community has to have kind of a rough proportionality and nexus to the improvement. So we can't just mandate that they do a whole bunch of stuff without any kind of rationale for it. And so these are kind of memorialized in the Nolan and Dolan Supreme Court decisions. Recently, the Sheets versus County of El Dorado had a dispute regarding their development impact fees. They had a pretty hefty fee for a mobile home unit that was being constructed in a residence. The applicant said, hey, what's the justification for this? Their fee structure was pretty antiquated, and so ultimately the Supreme Court ruled that as part of those development impact fees, there has to be the nexus and proportionality that also applies to those fees. And so really what is in terms of tonight is to add a provision into our development impact fee program ordinance that allows for someone to appeal those fees if they think it is not proportional to what it should be, and just increases that mechanism following the Supreme Court decision. I do want to quickly note that the County of El Dorado, their fee structure and ours are very different. Ours is much more specific, much more tied to the impacts of a project. So the facts and circumstances of what the County of El Dorado had that created that Supreme Court decision is very different here, but we wanted to make sure that at least that carve out is available. And that is all I have for tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. There are no applicants, so we'll skip that part. Are there any public comments for a public hearing? No. No rebuttals necessary either. We will close the public hearing. The time is now 9:13 p.m. Council discussion? Anything to discuss?
Oh, are we at announcements?
No. This is for the public hearing. Is there any discussion regarding the ordinance for 447 amending chapter 15?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And I'll second. Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Venable, and I seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Ben. All right, council reports before I'm gonna promise our city clerk. Free compost and mulch. We've done this before. It was a huge success. It all went away very quickly, which means there was a need. So the third Saturday of every month, at the vacant lot across from the Equestrian Center, the address is 13273 California Street, there will be compost and mulch for free. Just show up, bring your own sturdy bags, pails, containers, gloves, trucks, or trailers. First come, first serve while supplies last. There's no proof of residency. All right, so moving on. Don't forget, show up for that, free compost and mulch. Also, May 18th, the annual Safe Swim event, 7th Street Pool, 12385 7th Street. Free swim tests, hands-on CPR presentation, informational booths, swim lessons, demonstrations, and early swim lessons. This is awesome. Megan, great stuff. This is in coordination with our fire department. And Ben. Sarah. Even better. Cue cards up here. All right, Sarah. Good job. It's free, everybody, so show up to that. All right. This is now, Councilman Duncan, what do you got for us for announcements or reports?
I just want to compliment Megan and her staff for another incredible music and arts festival. I really appreciate, we had a good time, and I think you guys did an outstanding job, so thank you very much.
I'll second Councilman Duncan's sentiments for the event. It was very good. I was there both nights. And then I have a question. It's not really an announcement. I know we just talked about the budget. I'm not trying to find more ways to spend money. But I was wondering if we've ever done a government day with our high school kids, brought them to the city, have them talk to council members, see how government works, maybe bring some of our young kids from the staff that are on and maybe work with the advisory committee. Have we ever pursued anything like that before?
We have not partnered with the high school, but we have partnered with Parkview Middle School to do something similar to what you're seeing. I think it's a great idea, and Sarah and our team can definitely work with the high school to see if they're interested in something like that for the next school year. And I think I can speak on behalf of the Youth Advisory Committee. These are definitely things that we're looking to do and partner with in the community.
All right, thank you.
Those Yosemite half marathons are fun, huh? I saw the, did you soar getting up? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Half marathons, those are awesome. Fun running.
Only when you train.
It's awesome. Fun runs. All right. Any other announcements, reports?
Good job, Sarah, on getting 3 more young kids to our committee, and a good job at the Music and Arts Festival as well. It was absolutely packed on Friday night. Absolutely crazy. All the vendors and everybody that I've talked to and stuff said they had record-breaking sales, so it was fantastic.
Yeah, Megan, that was awesome. That 90s band nailed it. They were awesome. So thank you.
Mr. City Manager, do you have any announcements?
No, sir.
No? Awesome. The next regular meeting for the Yucaipa City Council will be Monday, June 10th, 2024, right here, your City Council chambers, 6 p.m. We will adjourn the meeting in memory and in honor of Greg Bollinger. The time is 9:18. Thanks for participating, folks. Have a good week.